Have been a major story. Schwarber gonna send one way out of here. How far will it fly? My goodness. Kyle Schwarber with a tape measure shot up on top of the pavilion and right. That is one of the biggest bombs you will ever see. And the Phillies tie it up immediately on a Schwarber bomb here in the fourth.
That thing was hit so hard and so far. Baseball has been great so far in the playoffs. I know that we say this every year, and I'm not a big, night in, night out regular season guy, but playoff baseball is awesome. And the Phillies were on the verge of getting swept heading back to Dodger Stadium. Phillies, by the way, were the favorite to win this whole thing. Not that it ever works out in the Major League Baseball playoffs, but Kyle Schwarber was like 0 for his last 23 at-bats, 0 for 8 in the series in the first two games, losing the first two in Philly to the Dodgers, and that was his first of 2 home runs last night, 455 feet. The Phillies beat the Dodgers to stay alive 8-2, and their big three, Trey Turner, Kyle Schwarber, Bryce Harper, all former Washington Nationals. In the game, they went 7 for 13, 5 RBIs, 2 home runs. The big three in their lineup had been silent in the first two, and they came to life last night. And game 4 tonight at Dodger Stadium. It's the early game because we get a game 5 tonight. I'm sorry, we get another game 4, Cubs Brewers. We get a game 5 tomorrow night. On Friday night, the Tigers and Mariners with Skubal pitching for Detroit in Seattle in a game 5. The winner of that takes on Toronto, who eliminated the Yankees. I've got to say this real quickly, and the show today, by the way, with Max will be a busy show, a little bit of a football show today. I will have a smell test pick or 2 on the show today for tonight's football action. You're going to hear from Steve Suter, who did his film breakdown on my podcast yesterday. He was excellent. I'm going to play the part where he goes through Jaden Daniels' first game back. Charch will join us. Denton will join us. We'll do some college football. The worst part about last night's Phillies-Dodgers game was Clayton Kershaw, a legend, a first ballot Hall of Famer, one of the great left-handed pitchers in the history of the game. The last time he had come in relief in a playoff game was 2019 in that deciding game against the Nats in the NLDS when he got out 2 batters to end the 7th and then gave up back-to-back homers in the 8th for the game to get tied. And you saw that, famous shot of him isolated in the dugout after getting pulled, just despondent. Last night, Kershaw got absolutely destroyed in this game. It was still a game when he came in. It was 4-1. It was 3-1 when he came in the 7th, and he actually escaped the 7th miraculously. Not with great pitches, but Schwarber got caught on first, got doubled up, and that was one of the outs. There was another really good catch in the outfield to kind of bail him out. But then in the 8th, homer, walk, fielding error, single, homer, double, single. And the score 5 runs later was 8-1. And Dave Roberts never pulled him. He just left him out there because they didn't want to go through the bullpen. The game was basically over, so he had to eat it. 2 innings for Clayton Kershaw, 6 hits, 5 runs, 4 of them earned, 3 walks, no strikeouts, gave up 2 home runs on 48 pitches. I don't know that we're going to see Clayton Kershaw again in the postseason. I guess in a long series, it may be impossible to avoid him as we get to best of 7 in the next round if they advance. Playoffs have been great, man. I'm rooting for the Phillies. I like Trey Turner. I like watching Harper. I like watching Schwarber. I like their crowd, even though it is very much a front-running baseball crowd in Philadelphia. They play tonight at 6 o'clock, followed by Brewers Cubs in a game 4. The Cubs got 4 in the top of the first, and they beat the Brewers 4-3. There's your baseball for the show. Your hockey for the show. The Caps opened up with a 3-1 loss. I'm not going to tell you that I watched a lot of this game. I was flipping back and forth, but I'm assuming, Max, you as a big hockey guy watched this game. What happened?
So I was at the game. I was in
You
attendance. It was shout out to Uncle Ted because I saw a tweet towards the end of the game that said
Uncle Ted being Ted Leonsis?
yes, because he put out a LinkedIn post that said if you are a customer affected by the YouTube TV or Hulu Plus debacle that's currently going on with Monumental, swing by Suite 104 for a free year of Monumental Plus. And that I did. So shout out to Ted. I will be watching all the Caps games.
You got a free year of Monumental Plus?
Yes. Thank you, Ted Leonsis.
Okay.
Hear me, can he?
Max, did I lose you?
All righty, we're gonna throw to a break and figure this out in the in the break. Give us 1 sec. We'll be right back.
All right, we'll work on some of these technical issues and get them figured out. It was Rendon and Soto who homered back-to-back on Kershaw back in 2019 in Game 5. That tied the game, and remember, Howie Kendrick won it with the grand slam in the 10th to win Game 5. But Kershaw looked just absolutely distraught, and Dave Roberts had to keep him out there last night. That was a hard-to-watch inning if you are a Clayton Kershaw or just a baseball fan, as he got absolutely lit up in a relief appearance last night. He's pitched well this year, by the way. All right, here's my what do you got? So you're going to hear some of Steve Suter's film breakdown of the Chargers game. Specifically today, you're going to hear him break down Jaden Daniels' performance. I won't, bury the lead. He loved it. He thought Jaden was phenomenal. But we went through a segment of the game, which we talked a lot about on Monday, and even maybe a little bit on Tuesday, that I want to go back to here during this What Do You Got segment. The end of the first half, the aggressiveness by Dan Quinn, which, by the way, let me just say, I'm for. I love how aggressive he is, Kingsbury is, especially with Jaden in the game. They definitely have a preference to be aggressive with Jaden at the end of halves, not so much Mariota. And they did take it a little bit less aggressive against Green Bay with Jaden in that Thursday night game. But I'm going to get to the what do you got here in a moment, but I want to just set it up again so everybody remembers. It's 10-7. They have gotten back into the game. Courtesy of the Quan Martin forced fumble, the 3rd and 16 throw to Jalen Lane, that drive that ended with a Bill Krosky-Merritt touchdown run. They get a punt, and the ball is down at the 7-yard line with 1:35 left in the first half. It's 10-7 Chargers. Washington with terrible field position. They do have one timeout left with 1:35 to go. The Chargers also have a timeout left. It's also important just to note that Washington is going to get the ball to start the third quarter. Well, they come out swinging. The first throw to Ertz is a catchable ball. Suter thinks it's a drop. I actually thought it was a bit high, but he said, "Look, it's not perfectly accurate, but it's a catchable ball. You got to catch that if you're Zach Ertz." And then they go second down, if you recall, and it's a sack back to the 2-yard line. So now it is 3rd and 15 from their own 2-yard line. Interestingly, after the sack, nobody calls a timeout. Washington doesn't. At that point, I think they're probably going to run the football maybe on 3rd down, do something safe, punt it, and get out of Dodge. By the way, I'm glad they didn't. They ended up getting 3 points after the roughing the punter, etc. But I want to get to the play in question here. So they, on 3rd and 15, drop Jaden back again into the end zone. And he throws incomplete to Deebo Samuel, and that brings on the punting unit. But that 3rd and 15 play, I talked about how Bud Dupree was within a whisker of a strip of Jaden. I mean, his hand, Jaden's hand with the ball in it barely clears Dupree at the last second. Incomplete. So there's an incredible opportunity on that play for a strip, fumble, touchdown, or safety, whatever. And we're talking 17-7, 12-7, Chargers due to get the ball back. But what Suter pointed out to me yesterday is what was missed on that play. An absolute blatant grab hold by Wiley on a blitzing Derwin James. Clear as, crystal clear gets. He grabs Derwin James's jersey. I said to Steve, when you get holding in the end zone, I would say 8 times out of 10, it is tackle on edge rusher because it's so exposed. That's typically what you get when you get a holding for a safety in the end zone. This was a guard picking up a blitzing safety, and he grabs his jersey and keeps James from getting to Jaden because he's got a clear line, and he grabs his jersey as he's going by him. They missed that. Should have been a safety. Washington punts. We know what happened after that. Roughing the punter. Ladd McConkey returns it for a touchdown. My point here is there is definitely a mindset, and I like it, of being aggressive in these situations and trusting in not just Kingsbury, the players, but really the trust is in Jaden Daniels. But I do think that there is a time and a place for, it's 3rd and 15 from our own 2-yard line, and we only have one timeout left anyway. Maybe we shouldn't drop back where only bad things can happen on 3rd and 15 from your own 2-yard line. Maybe we run the ball here, and, yes, the Chargers would have taken their last time out, and yes, you would have punted it back to them, and they would have had the ball with a chance to add maybe 3, not 7, and you're going to get the ball to start the second half. But that was, in hindsight, I mentioned this, and I said it's a debatable thing in that situation, especially after the first down incompletion. You probably, on 2nd and 10, want to do something a little bit more conservative. And he got sacked on 2nd and 10 back to the 2-yard line. On 3rd and 15 from their own 2, that's a bit reckless. And they got away with it. So I guarantee you they know they got away with it. They got away with a blatant hold in the end zone that should have been a safety, which, this happens all the time. We get missed calls all the time. And they were certainly on the right end of the penalty, disparity on Sunday. And I think a lot of it was forced by Washington. No doubt. Armstrong drew a hold. I mean, their pass rush created and wreaked havoc on San Diego, on LA's offensive line, and on Justin Herbert in particular. But if they had called the safety here, or if Bud Dupree had smacked the ball out of Jaden's hands and they had fallen on it for a touchdown, that would have been an absolute, what are you doing there? It's 3rd and 15 from your own 2-yard line. You have gotten back into this game after you were on the verge of falling behind 13-0, 17-0. You're back in this game. You've got the momentum, and you're going to get the ball to start the second half. And this guy, Harbaugh, showed after the sack, no inclination to use a timeout before the 3rd and 15. I don't know why he didn't. He should have. So let's get to the break, or worst case, let's punt it and try to hold them to, no worse than a field goal attempt, because Dicker does have incredible range. Every kicker does now in the league, pretty much, with these new juiced up kicking balls. But yeah, I think it's fair to call the 3rd and 15 from their own 2-yard line drop back a reckless play, a reckless call. Again, don't get me wrong, I so much prefer the using the timeouts on defense, trying to gain an extra possession, trying to get points on every possession. They do it well, and they've got a guy that you can trust in, for sure. And they've got a guy that can literally take a bad situation like a 3rd and 15 and make a big play. And all of a sudden you're out of trouble and you're going down there with a chance to score. And of course that's in their mindset. It's 3rd and 15. Our guys overcome 3rd and 15 a lot. But 3rd and 15 from your own 2 with 50 seconds to go, you only got one timeout left. And, they're not that bad defensively. They're pretty good. And here comes Derwin James, and it's a blatant hold. And it is a very close to a strip by Bud Dupree. And we would have criticized, I think everybody would have criticized had it been a safety to make it 12-7. And then, by the way, they're getting the ball back with a chance to add to it. And maybe it's 15-7 at half. Or the strip and the fumble and the recovery, and it's 17-7. By the way, I'm not saying that would have decided the game, because the way they had turned it around after, that first touchdown drive, they were going to be in the game in the second half regardless. But it could have been a different score going into the break. I think it was reckless, actually. We talked about it on Monday's show, and I said there's definitely a debate here for being, anti what you are, which is a bit more conservative given field position, the one timeout left, the fact that you're getting it to start the third quarter. But that's not what they thought, for sure. And they got away with one. They definitely got away with one. It's pretty much the only time Tunsil gets beat in the entire game, and because Tunsil was outstanding in this game. And Dupree is within a whisker of getting the football on Jaden's, when Jaden pulled the ball back to throw it to Debo, incomplete. And Wiley is grabbing Derwin James's jersey from behind. Now, I was looking for, typically that would be a line judge, call. And I don't see where the line judge was on this play. The referee, the head referee in the back of the end zone, because Derwin James's back is turned to that referee away from it. That's where the tug is. He misses it. And so I don't know where the referee was that should have called that, but it should have been 12-7. But they miss a lot of those calls. All right. I think other than listening to Suter's breakdown on Jaden, I think we are almost in that mode of turning towards Monday Night Football in Chicago. No Sunday game. We get to watch NFL football all day long on Sunday. And there's some good games coming up on Sunday. So did you see yesterday that Bill Krosky Merritt was given the FedEx Air and Ground Award? Baker Mayfield got the Air Award, and Krosky Merritt got the Ground Award. It's the second time he's won it this year. The FedEx Air and Ground Award, weekly award. Krosky Merritt, for his 14 carries, 111 yards, got the award. How did Rico Dowdle not win that award this week? Rico Dowdle had 206 yards rushing. I'm glad Bill won it for the second time. How do you, if you're FedEx and you're handing out awards, and it wasn't, a meaningless 206 yards rushing? By the way, is that even possible to have? Like, you can have a 390-yard passing day that ends up being meaningless, in a loss, in a big loss. You can't, have a 206-yard rushing day and have it not lead to, a win or a very competitive loss. They won the game. The Panthers won the game. They're 2-3. This terrible team from earlier in the year is all of a sudden 2-3 with Dallas at home on Sunday, and they're only a 3-point dog. Look out, Cowboys. Rico Dowdle, 23 carries, 206 yards in the game, 9 yards per carry, a touchdown rushing. He also had 3 catches for 28 yards. But this was the Ground Award. Do you think they just weren't paying attention to the Carolina-Miami game?
Especially because it's weird because, Bill's also nominated for Rookie of the Week. So he's already got an award he's nominated for. Why wouldn't you just give it to the guy who had 200 on the ground?
I have a feeling that when the FedEx people sit down to, Washington Chargers was the most watched game of the weekend. It was the 425 big game on Fox. 20+ million people watched it. And I would have to think that Carolina-Miami was the least watched game on Sunday. Is it possible they just missed? Look, I said to you the other day, did you know that Rico Dowdle rushed for 206 yards? I didn't even know it until either yesterday or the day before. Maybe they just missed it. It's possible.
It certainly is, I guess.
He's a good back. He has been a good back. He was underutilized in Dallas. Last year, they went out and brought Zeke back, and it became clear after the third or fourth week, Zeke's done. And then Dowdle got the bulk of the carries. He basically, had a season last year in which he rushed for 1,079 yards in the equivalent, if you want to count his lead back action, of 12 games. And he did not have a good start to the season. I mean, Carolina's not good, and they were struggling in a lot of these games and behind, so they were throwing the ball in a lot of the games. But even in the game when they blew out Atlanta prior to the Falcons playing us, he only had 10 carries for 30 yards. But I don't know, when you rush for 206 yards, which is the best rushing day of the season so far, right? Has to be. I don't think anybody else has had. What did Derrick Henry have in the opener? Did he go for 200 against Buffalo?
No.
It was a lot of yards, though, wasn't it? I'm pulling it up right now. 169.
Okay, yeah.
He had in the opener. So this was the number one rushing output of the season. By the way, it may end up being the number one rushing day of the season. 206 yards is a pretty damn good day. There aren't many 200-yard rushing days in a season. And somehow they gave it to the guy that had 111. We'll take it. Bill will take it. Bill is a legend. Even with Federal Express, FedEx is giving Bill the award over the guy that rushed for 206 yards. Crazy. It's something else here that I wanted to mention in the open. Yeah, I mentioned this yesterday, and I wanted to emphasize it because Washington, I don't know the last time that at any point in the season, at least a couple of games into the season, that they were the number one rush offense, yards per game in the league. You know, they've had teams where they've been very good rushing teams, clearly. Some of the Portis teams, even with Gibbs, the 2012 team. The 2012 team, though, was not the number one rush offense in the league. I don't think it was. I'm going to go back and check that. The number one rush offense. Oh, it was. So that was the last time. All right. They finished number one in rushing yards per game in 2012. I just found the answer. I thought that they were top 5 with RG3. They were number one in 2012. So it's been 13 seasons since Washington was ranked as, and I don't think it's happened even in season. Last year, they were certainly in the top 3, top 4 for pretty much the bulk of the season, but they weren't number one offensively last year. They finished, by the way, in terms of yards per game, they finished 3rd. But remember, the Ravens were way up there. They averaged 187.6 yards per game. The Eagles were 2nd. Washington was at $154 a game and finished 3rd. But they are currently the number one rush offense in the NFL, 156.4 yards per game. They're also the number one average yards per carry team in the league at 5.9 yards per game. But the disconnect here is that the time of possession numbers are terrible. Typically, the top ranked rush offenses in the NFL are also very high on the time of possession number. And Washington currently is 28th in the league in time of possession. They're averaging 27 minutes, 19 seconds a game in time of possession. Whereas the number 2 rush offense in the NFL, Buffalo, is the number 1 time of possession team in the league. The number, hold on for 1 second. The number 5 rush offense in the league, the Atlanta Falcons, they're the number 2 time of possession in the league. Detroit is the number 7 rush offense in the league. They're number 3 in time of possession. So more often than not, if you are a top rush offensive football team, and obviously I think most of you understand the idea is that if you're running the football, the clock's running, and if you're converting on 3rd downs, you're staying on the field. 156.4 yards per rushing yards per game should equate to something like in the top 5 in time of possession, but it doesn't. It's 28th. That's a massive disconnect from what you typically see. And the reason for that is the defense can't get off the field. And in the last 2 games in particular, going back to the Atlanta game, they were doubled up at halftime, if you recall. Doubled up. It was like 20-10 time of possession. The play count was way off. That game ended 34 minutes and 15 seconds to 25-45 for Washington. And then on Sunday against the Chargers, first half, not exactly doubled up, but nearly doubled up in the first half. And most of that happened in the first quarter and a half when Washington gave up 179 yards on the first 3 drives before the fumble. And again, 34 minutes, 19 seconds, 25-41. The play differential, the Chargers had 10 more offensive snaps in the game. Atlanta had 13 more offensive snaps in the game. And then you go back to the Green Bay game, and that was pretty ugly as well. It was 33-27, basically, in time of possession. Washington gained in the second half with that. But if That changes. If the defense can improve just a little bit, if they can have, like, even the great pass rush the other day didn't equate to getting off the field enough in that football game. A lot of it was in the first half, but the Chargers were 9 of 16 on third down. Okay, that is not a rate in which you want to allow. 9 for 16. And look, in the second half with the 20-10 lead, they played a lot of bend, don't break on that long drive that ended in interception. 14 plays, 53 yards, 7 minutes and 12 seconds. They gave up one third down conversion after another until the third and goal. Suter said to me yesterday, he said, you saw the formula for Washington defensively this year. He's like, he does not think that there's a chance that they're going to become a true lockdown man coverage team. And he's not even convinced that they'll be a good zone coverage team. But he said if they can get the lead in these games and Armstrong and Kinlaw and company can rush the passer and they can sit back in zone behind it, bend, don't break, that's the formula defensively for having some success. The problem with that is you're going to give up some time of possession. You're going to give up a 14-play, 53-yard, 7-minute, 12-second drive, which is what they gave up to the Chargers before getting the turnover on third and goal. And if they can make plays like the Quan Martin play, like the Johnny Newton Sanderstill play at the goal line, and they can sit back and play more zone coverage and have that pass rush be effective, that probably is the best formula for keeping the chunk plays down. They're going to give up a lot of underneath on 3rd and 6 to Keenan Allen, 3rd and 9 to Quentin Johnston, 3rd and 7 to Keenan Allen. They're going to give up a lot of that stuff against good teams that are going to shred their zone coverage. But as long as they keep everything in front of them and they've got a lead and they've got a pass rush, that's the formula for winning more games than losing. Because I think we've seen man coverage tends to be a disaster for them. They just don't seem to be on the same page. Even in zone coverage, they're not on the same page enough. But Caleb Williams and the Bears, he's been playing better. It's a creative offensive coordinator, head coach, not an offensive coordinator anymore, Ben Johnson, head coach. The Bears have, the ability, offensive line-wise, although there was an injury, they're really good. Tackle Darnell Wright, the kid from Tennessee, who I'm convinced in the 2023 draft, had he fallen, Washington would have been all over him. They wanted and really liked Darnell Wright, but Wright is banged up. We'll see. Maybe you get, for a fourth time this year, you get a team in whose offensive line is a bit injured. Wright's played well. Jonah Jackson's on that line. Thuney's been outstanding for them. And then they've got weapons, they've got DJ Moore and Adunze's having a really good season. By the way, Zacchaeus is in Chicago. If you didn't know that, Luther Burden, the rookie from Missouri, I would have loved him for us. He's had some moments. They still have Cole Kmet. They have the rookie Loveland from Michigan at tight end. They've got talent on that team. This is a little bit like the Atlanta game, although there's no Bijan Robinson. Okay, so that's the good news. DeAndre Swift is not Bijan Robinson. Not many people are. But this is a team that has a lot of talent, and they just have a quarterback that hasn't figured it out yet. With Caleb Williams has more starts than Penix Jr., but that's the question mark. Penix Jr. got healthy against Washington, looked really good, picked us apart. Can Caleb Williams do that? Maybe if their offensive line's banged up, maybe if they don't have Darnell Wright on Monday night. It's going to be, from an offensive standpoint, the numbers that I gave you, the rush offense. Oh, the second part of that is Chicago has the 31st ranked rush defense, right? 28th per DVOA. Washington's first in yards per game, 5th in overall DVOA rush offense. This would appear to be an obvious, we got to run the football against Chicago. Run the football, keep your defense off the field, and, close out these drives. And with Jaden, I think you got a much better chance of closing them out with touchdowns more often than not, although guys like Chris Moore need to catch the football when it's thrown to them. Noah Brown was back yesterday. Terry still out. Dan Quinn had some things to say yesterday. Nobody really wants to talk that much about the Chicago game from last year. Good for them. We'll get to some of that. Denton will join us at 11 a.m. We'll preview the upcoming college football weekend, which includes a couple of big games in the Big Ten and in the SEC. Charge after that, and I do have smell test, I think picks, plural, for tonight's football action on the show today. Real quickly, want to let you know about Window Nation. Window Nation is offering all of you a chance to get new windows and not pay anything for 2 years. All right. First of all, they'll offer you a buy two, get two offer. So for every 2 windows you pay for, the next 2 will be free of charge. And then no down payment, no payments on a monthly basis, and no finance charges for an entire 2-year period. So you're not going to pay any interest or any money at all until 2027. It's a big deal in terms of savings with the holidays coming up. The cool weather is here. Felt like fall this morning. And Window Nation wants to come out and take care of your older windows, creating better efficiency in your home and lower heating bills. Call them at 866-90-NATION or head to windownation.com. Do it before Halloween, October 31st, and you can get access to this deal. Window Nation is a trustworthy, high-quality, big-time customer service operation. They were recently ranked highest on Forbes' list of the best window installation companies in America. You can trust Window Nation for high-quality, affordable windows, I promise. windownation.com. Let them know that I sent you.
All right. Happy Thursday, everybody. Here's what's happening. The Cleveland Browns going into fire sale mode, and they traded Greg Newsome to the Jaguars last night. A playoff baseball recap. The Tigers, they force a game 5 against the Mariners by a score of 9-3. The Chicago Cubs, they hold off the Brewers 4-3 to cut the series lead in half. The Toronto Blue Jays eliminate the New York Yankees from postseason contention in a 5-2 victory. And the Philadelphia Phillies lit up Clayton Kershaw and the Dodgers by a score of 8-2 to stave off elimination. And to hockey, last night, the Caps, they fall to the Bruins in their season opener by a score of 3-1. A tight game where the Caps had the upper hand early, but unable to capitalize on the power play. The Bruins score first, Caps get one back, and then moments later, Bruins retake the lead, and that was all she wrote. Tonight, we got an NFC East matchup on tap for Thursday Night Football. Eagles making a bus ride to East Rutherford to take on the New York Giants. Kickoff at 8:15. Pregame starts right here on the Team 980 at 8 p.m. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type of the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Denton's office throughout all football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
I know last year was last year, but there's a lot of attention on the Hail Mary, obviously playing the Bears again. What is your biggest memory of that night? And then what is the biggest takeaway for you from that play?
I don't know. I don't want to talk about it. I just leave that last year. It speaks on is about itself.
Hi, Coach. On the same topic, when you're helping the guys prepare this week, how much do you talk about that play and the end of that game versus recognizing Chicago's a different team this year and you have a whole different week of preparation ahead?
Yep, that was the first I talked about it right there.
You haven't adjusted with the team at all?
0.
Do you plan to?
None.
Gotcha. That's all I had.
Yeah.
Thanks.
It's last year's story, like it was awesome. We loved it, but like it doesn't apply to this week's game at all, unless we get into that exact scenario and that exact situation. So then we can talk about it. But until then, we got a lot of stuff to get better at and work on to get ready.
First, Jaden Daniels, then Dan Quinn yesterday. Tyreek Stevenson was a big part of that play last year, and he's getting asked about it. He was number 29, if you recall, the one jawing at people in the crowd before the Hail Mary, getting back to the play late and then being the guy that actually tipped it up in the air for Noah Brown, one of the true boneheaded plays of last year. And he said that basically the only thing I could do from then on was show that my actions had changed and I had to become a better man and a better football player on the field. It was harsh. It hurt my feelings, the criticism. That's the best way I can explain it. It just hurt my feelings being a football player and having one of those mistakes that's going to linger around. Even when my son grows up, I've got to explain that to him. It definitely hurt, but I used it as fuel. He's actually been playing well this year, Stevenson has, for the Bears. Yeah, that's one of those plays, because it is an all-time memorable regular season play. I mean, that's, it's not at the top of the list, but it's certainly one of those in our franchise's history. And by the way, in the Bears franchise history, on the other side of it, you're never going to forget that play, and it's going to be replayed forever. And Stevenson will be a big part of that play forever. I thought the last part of Quinn just saying, unless the only reason to even hearken back to it is if we get into that same situation again. That would be kind of crazy, because it'll be dark like it was, late at 7:30 or whatever it was last year. They're going to have the alt black uniforms on. Bears are going to be wearing their white uniforms. It's going to look awfully similar. Imagine they've got the ball at midfield with 3 seconds to go down, 4 or 5, and you're going to get a Hail Mary at the end. Be pretty wild. All right. Dan Quinn had a couple of other things that I wanted you to hear from yesterday. This was Quinn yesterday talking about third down issues and getting into better third down situations down in distance.
Hey, good afternoon, Coach.
Good afternoon.
You guys have the best running attack in the NFL right now. Yeah, your third down percentage is, I think, probably not as high as you would like it to be. How do those two things kind of marry to each other, and what is it going to take from your offense to get that number higher? Yeah, two things I think we're still digging in on, like most things, are still trying to get better at, some of our pre-snap fouls. We've had some of those that knock us into some longer ones. And the third downs, as you referenced, to say, how many of these can be smaller and closer, as opposed to ones that have more time and distance onto them. So they do tie together. When do we, the thirds that are medium compared to thirds that are long. And so those are definitely ones that do tie together, but it's definitely, as we talked about, our leveling up. That's one of them. And as a coach, you get to spend more time on some certain areas, and how do we affect that both ways? And so third downs, I think, a big piece for us. And in Chicago, that's one of the things that they do excellent.
Washington right now tied for third in the league for false start penalties. So some of those pre-snap, penalties are an issue right now with them. And I'm looking up right now, because I didn't do this before, but I can find the information, because they did have a delay of game on Sunday, and they used a timeout. Yeah, they're not up there on delay of games, but tied for third in the league on false start penalties. Yeah, I mean, we talked about, and he actually answered a question. Max let me know during the break that he actually was asked about the time of possession thing tied to the rushing yards. I'll play that for you in a moment. But yes, typically you're the number one rush offense in the league. You're going to be a little bit higher in third down percentage as well. And Washington right now in third down offense. Remember, defensively, they were very strong to start the season on third down. But right now, third downs on offense, I'll have it for you here in a second. They are 30. They're 29th in the league at 32.7% third down offense. Defensively, remember, for a few weeks, they were number one in the league on third down. They're not at number one in the league anymore. They're basically in the middle of the pack at 16th. So they went from number one after the Raider game in third down defense to, the game against the Falcons and the game against the Chargers. They gave up 9 of 16 against the Chargers. They're now dropped all the way to 16th in the league on third down defense. But yeah, time of possession and first and third down conversions offensively, usually they are connected more so to being a really good rush offense, and they haven't been for this team yet this year. This was Quinn on the time of possession thing. Max mentioned during the break that he was actually asked about the time of possession and the rush offense numbers. Here's what he said.
Dan, if I tell you there's a team that leads the league in rushing, but is 28th in time of possession, can you explain how those things mesh? Because it seems they should be more in line, but not. Yeah, it would be. I think it's the whole factor of it. Like there's probably some games where we had too many long drives, defensively that we didn't like. So I think it all kind of, works in together as we're going. I still feel like there's plenty of areas for us to improve upon. Third downs would be a big part of that as well, Ben, because obviously now there's some punts and some things that end some drives. So I think that's probably the closest correlation. When you're playing really well on third down, you have, more extended drives. If you're really effective on first and second downs, you could actually have less third downs, and you're just maintaining the ball. So we've got plenty of work to do on third down, but I would say going in, that could be one of the, the topics.
Yeah. Remember last year they finished 6th on third down and number 1 on fourth down. They're 4 of 6 on fourth down this year. They're way down the list in terms of attempts. They just haven't had, it's not really been a case of them being less aggressive. They just haven't had as many, 4th and 3s or less where it was an obvious go for it situation. And let's keep in mind too, in the third down numbers. Okay. Right now they're sitting at 29th in the league in third down offense. Jaden's played in 3 games, and one of those games you almost feel like you got to toss out against the Packers because they had no chance in that particular game on that particular night. And in the games, and look, the third down percentage on Sunday, I think was maybe a little bit misleading. They were 2 of 7, but one of those third downs was running out the clock at the end of the game before they went for the fourth down and scored the touchdown. So you don't really want to, they're not trying to pick up the third down. They'll take it if they can run for it, but they're running clock in that particular spot. So, that puts one of those third downs at risk. And then I'm trying to think, was the field goal at the end of the first half a third down play? I don't think it was. I think it was the second down, right? They completed the ball to Debo, and then they clocked it after that. That would have been a first down play. But yeah, I don't feel personally like there's going to be a third down issue with Jaden on the field. And I think the fourth down numbers, they're 4 for 6. That's pretty good on fourth down. But, the circumstance of having more fourth down opportunities is really a function of not being successful enough on first, second, and third down. You'd prefer as a team to have the fewest number of fourth down attempts and the fewest number of third down attempts, because that means your first and second down offense is super productive. The best teams, sometimes the best offensive teams, certainly the most explosive offensive teams, tend to have a lower number of third down attempts in the league because they are producing first downs on first and second down. There was one more Dan Quinn I wanted to play because I do think that this is going to be an interesting situation, and I don't know if it's going to develop this week or not. But Chris Paul and Andrew Wiley are competing clearly with Sam Cosmi when he comes back. Here was Dan Quinn.
You've had Chris Paul and Andrew Wiley playing well at guard the last couple of weeks. I know they're playing different spots, but are they sort of in competition with each other to determine who's going to be the other guard starter besides Cosmi?
Yeah, I would say there's competition all the time, but as we're going into it, let's wait till he gets back and gets going. I think that's more appropriate for it because even then, how much are we going to go right when he does get back? So I think we got, some time to work through where we want to get to there.
Here's my guess. My guess is Chris Paul's not going anywhere. And that when Cosmi is ready to play, and that's, that point is an important point by Dan Quinn there. The offensive line's playing pretty well right now, better than the situation with Coleman and Allegretti early in the season. And so they're not going to put Cosmi out there because they're not going to be desperate to put him out there quite yet. They're going to let him come along. So this may be a conversation for next week or even the week after. But not necessarily this week. But I would bet you, first of all, right guard was Cosmi's position. That's where Wiley's playing. Secondly, Chris Paul has been outstanding since replacing Brandon Coleman at left guard. And so I would guess that if they do, when Cosmi comes back, if he is ready to play, if they feel good about Cosmi entering back into the lineup, I would bet you it's for Wiley, not Chris Paul. I think they're really happy with Chris Paul. And again, right guard, I'm pretty sure that's true, right? Cosmi's a right guard.
Yes, he is right guard.
Yeah, so that's the position that Wiley's playing right now. Now, Wiley's versatile. He could go to left guard if they thought he was a better player than Chris Paul, but I don't think that's where they're going to land. I don't. We'll talk some college football with Denton next.
Pick up your book bags. Grab your notebooks. It's time to go on campus with Denton.
Joins us every Thursday to talk some college football, though I did see you retweeted like these game picks for Monday night. And I'm asking you this question. You got a kick out of somebody predicting that the Bears would win 73-0. Do you know what the significance of 73-0 is?
Oh, come on, Kevin. I know I'm young, but I'm a student of the game. That was the joke. If you're young,
all
right.
I couldn't tell if in your retweet if you knew it or not. I assumed you did because you are a student of the game, but I thought there was a chance that you just thought it was funny that the guy predicted some crazy score.
No, I know that significance, and it's funny. There's the one, if you follow those game picks, which I don't know that you do because it's more of a social media thing than anything.
Yeah.
But there's the one guy, Adam Rank, that is he's a diehard Bears fan, and he always picks against the Commanders. And it was also, I think it's funny that he is probably walking around furious that he did not come up with a joke of them beating us 73-0.
Got it. All right. Denton joins us every Thursday in this spot. And Denton, not only does he do a college football show on Sirius XM, College Football Overtime, which he's excellent at doing, he is the host of the Washington Commanders pre- and post-game coverage on this station and on 106.7 The Fan. All right, let's talk some college football. I want to go back to last week. Do you think that Penn State and Florida State are completely done?
Not completely done, but they're in a whole lot of hurt right now. I think they have eliminated any possibility of them controlling their own respective destinies, and they need a lot of things to happen to help them get into the 12. Now, Penn State's in a better spot because if you look at their schedule, they have a lot more opportunities for good quality wins. They get to play Ohio State. So if they beat Ohio State, you look at them a little differently. Now, would I expect Penn State to beat Ohio State? No, I would not. But they have more opportunities than Florida State does. Florida State needs the ACC to crumble if they're going to get in because UVA is pretty good and they have the head-to-head victory. Georgia Tech's pretty good. Miami is really, really good. So I don't know if Florida State, they didn't do themselves any favors as much as Mario Cristobal tried to help them out at the end of the game.
Is James Franklin dead man walking?
No, I don't think so. I think Penn State, the people in charge of the money and the boosters are hopefully smart enough to realize that if you do fire James Franklin, it'll give you momentary joy because, yes, we are finally done with James Franklin. But you have to then get the next guy right. And if you don't get the next guy right, you become what Nebraska has been. You become what Florida has been since Urban Meyer left. It's really not as cut and dry as, well, we're just going to hire somebody and they're going to be awesome immediately. So I think they need to think long and hard about it. I don't think you can just make a crash decision because you lost to a really bad team in UCLA. There's a lot more factors that go into that. And unless you can get someone that you feel confident is a surefire thing, like maybe a Kurt Signetti, I don't know that you would fire James Franklin.
Those are two interesting comps to go to Nebraska and to Florida as comps for Penn State. I think that is in both men's basketball and in football, sometimes fan bases just want that immediate satisfaction. And by the way, sometimes it's the right move, especially when it has sort of run its course. And personally, I believe James Franklin, it's run its course, but it doesn't mean that there's not a great risk on the other side. And in today's, landscape of salary cap and NIL and the ability like Texas Tech did this year to buy a team, it's more competitive out there, and you could fall by the wayside for a few years and yearn for the days in which you lost a close game to Oregon and then lost at UCLA as the number 7 team in America. It's true. Did you feel the same way about Vanderbilt that I felt, which is I'm more impressed with them as a team in a 30-14 loss than I was even before that game?
Maybe a little bit. I knew that Alabama was going to win that one. I didn't know they were going to win by as much as they did, but I was jumping around in my living room with Jim Miller.
That was a lucky cover, obviously. Yeah.
Thank God for it, though, because it had your boy going 4-1 last week. I think Vanderbilt is good, though. Offensively, it is all about Diego Pavia, but the SEC is really weird this year, Kevin, because there's not a lot of great offensive lines. Texas's offensive line isn't very good, where traditionally they are. LSU's offensive line is terrible, and traditionally they're pretty good. But I think Vanderbilt is one of the better offensive lines in the SEC. So that, to me, is what was really, really impressive. Alabama is more talented than they are, but Vanderbilt they got some dog in them, and it's more than just the quarterback this year. Whereas last year was all about Pavia. They've built a culture there to where they're going to be a tough out or a tough game in the months of November and December for some of these SEC teams. And I mean, who knows? Maybe they stumble their way as a 2-loss or maybe the first 3-loss team that gets into the playoff.
Do you think Florida is much better than their 2-3 record indicates?
Definitely. If they didn't lose to South Florida, you look at them with a completely different eye. And now they did lose, so you have to factor that into your equation of them. But if they didn't lose that game, they're 3-2 with losses to good teams. Whereas now they're 2-3 with losses. South Florida is still a good team. They're ranked once again. They fell out briefly when they lost to Miami, which is what happens when you're a group of 5 team, but they're now back in the rankings. So really they've lost to 3 ranked teams and 3 pretty good teams and 3 teams that might end up or should end up in the college football playoff. I think they're a lot better. Their schedule is disastrous. Anyone who was intelligent took Florida on, at the very least, on the points last weekend. I took them straight up on the money line because I just felt like they were a much better team than their record showed. And the Arch thing is still getting figured out.
So what is the Arch thing? Is it going to get figured out? He's gone from, Heisman Trophy favorite to a guy that's being talked about as a day 3 pick eventually, best case.
Yeah, he's fine.
And not in the upcoming draft. There's talk about him perhaps not even being back at Texas next year. So what's going on there?
I'd be curious to see what happens next year if he stays in college, which I am expecting him to stay in college. Look, I think he's fine, but he hasn't played before. He's still very much in what would be considered we do this all the time with the NFL, where if you only play 12 games one year, you go 4 games in before you're done with your rookie year, right? Because you got to play a 16 or 17. That's kind of where he's at. He's played like 7 games, 8 games now in college football. Like, it's really not a lot. I think he'll be okay. There was just too much pressure on him at the beginning of the year, and that's not his fault entirely, but that just kind of comes with the territory of having the last name Manning. And then some of the business moves, he knows, right? Like, that whole family understands what he is, and they used it to their advantage to get some money. But he's a fine quarterback with expectations of being an absolute world beater. And I think that was unfair. If you bet him to win the Heisman at the beginning of the year, that's on you. No one else. You never bet the Heisman front runner. You know this. I know this. You never bet the front runner, a preseason Heisman favorite. I just think there was too much pressure on him. And again, the offensive line isn't helping because at times he's running for his life. And that's really difficult when you're getting accustomed to playing in the SEC against really good teams and your offensive line isn't protecting you.
Yeah, what's interesting in watching him, though? Like, the Manning pedigree and the Manning, football IQ. And there are many games I watch him like, dude, you've got to throw the football. Like, at the end of the Florida game, the ball's got to leave his hand on that final play of the game. And he just seems to be oblivious to some of that stuff.
He's timid. Yeah, he still has the yips a little bit. I think he's gotten over it a bit, but in the Ohio State game, it was very, very obvious. And then in some of the lower level games, you're just like, God, you're supposed to be slicing and dicing these teams up. But then you have instances like in that Florida game, that 3rd quarter touchdown pass where he perfectly climbs the pocket. He's running forward and delivers a pass on the money in the back of the end zone. Like, that's a beautiful throw. So you see these points where you're like, all right, this is why people really thought highly of him. But then you see, as you mentioned, there's a lot more bad right now than there is good.
All right, I want to focus on one team that's quasi-local, and that is UVA, because I actually was listening to you either last weekend or maybe it was after the Florida State win, and you were looking ahead at their schedule with the guy that you were doing the show with on SiriusXM, and I went and looked at it, and I'm like, oh, my God. if Virginia beats Louisville, they're going to be in the ACC championship game. They're going to be one win away in the ACC title game away from a playoff berth. So tell everybody what the opportunity for Virginia is as a 5-1 team, 3-0 in the ACC, tied for first.
Yeah, that win against Florida State put them in a position that they certainly did not anticipate to be in. And I think you're right. If they, so they beat Louisville, and now you get Washington State, you get North Carolina, California, Wake Forest, Duke, Virginia Tech. I can't think of a better group of teams to play.
Duke's the game, and Cal's pretty good at home, but Duke could be Duke is 3-0 in the ACC.
Yeah, and that'll be on the road, but I mean, it's not like Duke has this massive, crazy home crowd in football. In basketball, yes. In football, no. So that'll be that one game where you circle and say, all right, this is deep, and that's where you're going to start to feel a little bit of the pressure, because at that point, we'll be weeks into the college football playoff rankings, and UVA will be, assuming they win up to that point, they're going to be not just in those rankings, they're going to be pretty high in those rankings, and they're going to start to hear that chatter. And as much as coaches say we don't listen to it, you absolutely do. But they're in a position now to where, like North Carolina, I already know Belichick's going to be coaching by then, with like this rumor of him looking for a buyout already. Cal has been a pretty good team, and you do have to travel for that one. The ACC traveling across the country is still a little weird for teams, but they're now in a position with Chandler Morris, and he is really the driving force here. They're in position to make the college football playoff. I do think 2 ACC teams get in, so as long as they get to the ACC championship game, which they might need a Georgia Tech loss somewhere along the way.
Let me interrupt you for a second, because that's what I was going to lead to, and we'll have plenty of time to sort this out, and it may not need to be sorted out because it usually doesn't. But Virginia, Duke, Georgia Tech, and Miami are 4 teams at the top of the ACC. They're all undefeated. I'm not even counting SMU. And there's very little head-to-head. Like Miami doesn't play any of the other 3. Virginia and Duke play, but Georgia Tech only plays one of the other 3. There is the possibility of multiple undefeated teams, more than 2, at the top of the ACC. I don't know what the tiebreakers are for the ACC championship game and who would qualify, but it's an interesting situation to keep an eye on when you look at the schedules of teams like Virginia, Georgia Tech, and Miami. Miami doesn't play any of those guys. Miami doesn't play Virginia. They don't play Georgia Tech. They don't play Duke.
This is the second year in a row they've had this. Because remember, we got down to the wire
because there's
last
so many
year.
teams.
There's so many teams, and they somehow, all of the good teams never play one another. So at the very least, Duke will either be like really in that conversation or very much out of that conversation, because they're the only team that plays one of the opposite. They play UVA and Georgia Tech. So if they go unbeaten in that, then they'll definitely be in there. If they don't, then they will be out. I don't know what exactly the tiebreakers are. I believe it then goes to, it's either points scored or common opponents.
I bet it's ranking. I bet it might be college football playoff rankings.
I think that's a little bit further down, because they have like 18 different legs of these. So I think they focus on some conference stuff first, and then they get to the ranking. But at some point, like it literally becomes, how many points did you score and how many points did you allow? So for some of these games, like for UVA, as we're talking about them, that game against North Carolina, who's been getting blown out by everybody that has a pulse, you're going to have to crush them. And you're going to need some style points. Same thing with Wake Forest. Same thing with Virginia Tech. It would be in their best interest to really start running the score up if necessary against some of these lesser teams.
Yeah, Virginia can score. They can't stop anybody. But they also scored 2 defensive touchdowns against Louisville. So that was Louisville had a rough day and a rather unlucky day in that game on Saturday. All right, let's look ahead. Number 1, Ohio State and Champaign to face 17th ranked Illinois. They're a 14.5-point favorite. I think Ohio State's defense is legit, like maybe the best in the country. What do you think about them offensively? Do you think they're going to figure it out?
I think they will, and I don't think that Illinois can stop the wide receivers. Ohio State is very much in the, hey, we got 2 guys on the outside that are probably better than just about everybody in the country. We dare you to stop them. If you stop one, we're going to throw to the other. If you try and stop both of them, well, we still have like a 3rd guy or 4th guy that could come in and score, or our guy will use his legs. Like there's just too much to go around. There's too much talent for Ohio State. And defensively,
is Tate a first-round pick?
Yeah, I think he will be. I think he will be.
Because Jeremiah Smith will be the number one pick when he comes out in 27, right?
Unless some like defensive end goes crazy over the next like 18 months, yeah, he'll be at the very least he's top 4 for sure, probably top 2 because he is excellent. Tate is really good. It's a little bit of a lesser wide receiver class, at least as we sit here now, coming out in 2026. But I think he'll be at the top of that. But defensively, they've allowed 2 touchdowns this entire year.
It's
insane. And it's like the second year in a row that it's been like this. You know, as much as Patricia gets flack in the NFL, most of which is deserved, this dude is basically a god amongst boys in college. I mean, these opposing quarterbacks have no idea what they're looking at when they go up against the Patricia defense. So, you know, best of luck to Luke Altmaier. He's done a really good job in terms of, you know, playing good football outside that Indiana game. But if you're getting 60 hung on your head top by Indiana, I don't know that Ohio State's going to score 60 on you, but I don't think they're going to have a problem covering the 14.5.
All right. Alabama off the win over Vanderbilt, and this reeks to me. I think I will have Missouri as a smell test pick tomorrow. They're catching 3.5 in Columbia at home. They've got a running back, by the way, who is tearing it up right now through 4 or 5 games. His name's Ahmad Hardy. Does Missouri have a chance to beat Bama outright?
They do. Yeah, their quarterback is the guy that was at Penn State and decided to leave before the college football playoff started, just based off of the nature of where the transfer window was. And he kind of had to make that decision. But Bo Preble is a really, really good player. You know, sometimes I look at it and wonder if Penn State wishes they had him, but he's been really, really good. And, you know, Missouri is this weird SEC team because it always feels like they kind of fly under the radar. They're not nearly as sexy as like Alabama, Georgia, LSU, Texas A&M. But Drink has a program, man. I think that's going to be a fun one.
Pinkel was a really good coach before him.
He is. And, you know, he does some of the things that are like a little goofy on social media, but he kind of backs it up way more. Like he does some of the stuff that we made fun of Brian Kelly for doing with recruits. He does that as well, but then they outperform what most people think of them. I'll tell you what, if they beat Alabama, one, that puts Alabama in a really tough spot of getting to the college football playoff, but then Missouri really is going to jump the line in terms of the rankings. They're 14th now. I imagine if they beat Alabama, they're at least going to take their spot at 8.
This feels like one of the bigger games Missouri's had in a long, long time. And if you're a college football fan and you watch Missouri, when they're playing at home, it's like a weird camera angle. It's like you're right on the field.
Yeah.
It's a really weird way to watch a game. You're super close to the action. Whereas, by the way, when you're watching Maryland on TV, you're as far away. The shot wherever that main camera is about as far away as you can get. All right. 2 games that really are going to highlight Saturday, both at 3:30. The Red River rivalry shootout, Oklahoma and Texas. Texas has really struggled this year. Mateer might be back Saturday for Oklahoma, and Texas is favored in this game by 1.5.
Are they still favored at most books? Because I know I
saw it fall to a pick at one point. I'll look at it real quickly. They were favored by 1.5 last night, but maybe with Mateer's possibility, maybe it shifted.
Yeah, I think I still see it at 1.5 at one of the books that I use, but at another book, it's 1.5 the other way. So shop around, people. That's word of advice.
Well, you got to be careful now because Oklahoma may get its starting quarterback back for this game.
I think they're bluffing, to be honest. I don't think that he is. I don't think that he's going to be ready. I think this is just the nature of the rivalry. The rivalry is still very much alive in college football. I would be stunned if Mateer plays, and if he does, I think it's going to be much more of him and his legs versus him and his arms. They said something like they're going to see on Friday how he grips the football. And I'm like, if you can't grip the football already, I don't know how much is going to change in 2 or 3 days. I'm not a doctor, but I don't know how much is going to change in 2 or 3 days.
All right, let's assume he doesn't play. How does this game shake out? Oklahoma's pretty good defensively. They've proven that this year.
They have. They're pretty good defensively. The best bet if Mateer doesn't play is the under. It's a very short number. It's like 42.5, 43.5. But both defenses are super, super sharp. Oklahoma, I think, is one of the best defenses in the country. So the under would be the play. But that line, if Mateer does not play, it does feel like Texas would be the go-to there.
All right. Indiana, 7th ranked team in America with a quarterback by the name of Fernando Mendoza. Know the name. He's a top 10 projected pick now. And the only quarterback that he is now behind is the quarterback he'll be facing in terms of the mock drafts for 2026. And that is Oregon quarterback Dante Moore. How do you see this game playing out in Eugene?
This is going to be a track meet. I think both offenses are really, really good. I think playing at Oregon is a very sneaky, great environment to play in. Like, it's going to be loud. There's going to be a lot of people there. So I think this is going to be awesome. Indiana is good enough to hang with Oregon. Like, they very much are. What you saw against Illinois was not a fluke. This is a legitimately good football team. It's not Indiana of last year where it's just everyone's kind of happy to see them here because we want new blood. Signetti's done a really good job using that year and then building off of the momentum. This team is legit, but I just love Oregon. Oregon has been one of my favorite teams this entire year because of Dante Moore. And I think Dan Lanning is so good in late game scenarios. So I like Oregon. I don't like them to lay the 7.5. So I kind of like Indiana with the points, but I do think Oregon's going to win.
I really wish one of these two games was at night. I'll give you just a sneaky one on Saturday night. I think Auburn's got a shot against Georgia at Jordan-Hare.
I do too.
That line's really short.
The lines are really short, and Hugh Freeze needs a big win this year. He was brought to Auburn to be a guy that beats the big, bad SEC teams. Georgia is a little bit more limited this year than they've been in years past. That's a sneaky one. And then USC Michigan is a little sneaky. USC's laying 2.5 at home.
Yeah, I think that's right, though. What do you think the number should be?
I thought it would be a little bit closer to a pick 'em. I think immediately people will see that. I don't disagree with the number, but I think the people will see that 15th ranked Michigan is the underdog, and the public is going to flock to Michigan.
Maeva is now a projected first round pick. Have you seen that? The USC quarterback?
I haven't looked at a mock draft lately. I'd be curious to see how many quarterbacks they have in there, and then how many quarterbacks are actually, projected first.
Well, all the quarterbacks in there now are completely different than the quarterbacks that were in there 5 weeks ago, before the season started, which tells you a lot about college football this year. A lot of unexpected. Last question for you: does Notre Dame have a chance to make the playoff?
Yeah, they do. As much as I want them in a conference, they're not going to get in a conference. There's no benefit to them to getting in a conference. They do have a shot, though. I think that Penn State loss helped them a little bit because, anytime you get more good teams with 2 losses, that kind of opens the door a little bit for other good teams with 2 losses. So I do think there's an opportunity. I would say they need USC this weekend. They need as many ranked opponents on their schedule to close, and they have USC next week. So if USC wins, that'll drastically help them. And then, as crazy as it sounds, there is still some sort of potential, maybe, just maybe, that Navy is ranked in November, and that would help them as well. They need a couple of quality wins.
Their running back tandem of Love and Price, it's the best.
So Jeremiah Love is probably my favorite.
Say that again.
Jeremiah Love is probably my favorite running back in college football right now.
So good, and I think their team is good. I mean, they have a 3-point loss on opening weekend to Miami, and a 41-40 crazy loss in South Bend to Texas A&M when they botched the extra point, hold late in the game.
Right.
I could easily see them running the table and winning they're a 24-point favorite over NC State on Saturday. All right. I'll talk to you. I'm sure we'll be texting over the weekend. I'll talk to you next week.
Yep.
At the Denton Day, everybody on X, on Twitter. He'll be back Monday, with Linnell and everybody to host the pre and post game shows right here on the Team 980 and 106.7 The Fan. Paul Charchian, Fantasy Football Talk next. I know there's one person listening to this rejoin song who knows what it is. I love looking at Charch's Twitter before he comes on. Always gives me topics to talk to him about that are not fantasy football related. You know, I've admitted this to you before. I'm not a fantasy football guy. I bet football, and I've had, you know, certainly degenerate portions of my life being a bettor of football. And fantasy's always been like, you know, a couple of beers, where betting's more like heroin. You know, it's more like the real thing. By the way, not that I would advocate that, and I've never used that, nor would I. I would never go to the beast, as it's referred to. But Charch and I have a lot of similar interests. I saw you tweet out the top 3 Joy Division songs. I'm going to tell you right now, I didn't even know Joy Division until maybe 10 years ago. And my middle son, who's a musician's like, "You're so into The Cure. How did you never get into Joy Division?" And then I did, and the rest is history. They're brilliant. That whole genre from the 70s and 80s, Cure, Smiths, Joy Division, incredible, right?
Yes, I think absolutely incredible. That new wave artistry that came through, Depeche Mode, English Beat, The Cure you mentioned.
The Beat,
New Order. It's just amazing. And the Joy Division story is particularly fascinating. It's been made into 2 different movies. One of them extremely good, called 24-Hour Party People. It is a fantastic story that is largely around Joy Division, but also New Order and the Happy Mondays. And it's about the Manchester music scene of the late 70s and into the 80s that started all of these bands. And it's a half comedy, half documentary, where the main person that's on screen, Steve Coogan, who's a great actor, he will talk to the camera a lot and tell you about things that are going to happen. It's like he already knows how this thing's going to play out with these bands. So he'll tell you things that are happening as in the movie while they're happening, what's going to happen. One of the key things about Joy Division to know is this. So Joy Division is built around their lead singer, who is he's really, really special and has got just an amazing voice. His name's Ian Curtis. And he would go on to unfortunately kill himself after 3 records, Joy Division records.
He was very young, really young.
Very young, 23 years old when he killed himself. And they were just like getting all this steam. Love Will Tear Us Apart, the song you just played, had just been released. And I mean, things were really going well for this band. He kills himself. And by every measure, it should be over for Joy Division. But instead, the remaining 3 members of the band added a woman in and renamed themselves New Order, totally changed their sound. They became electronified, and they became one of the biggest new age bands in the world, playing 100,000 seat, venues. Unbelievable that, that New Order came out of this, because, normally when you lose, the signature player dies and you're trying to go on with your bass player and your drummer and your rhythm guitars. It's over. But not here. They formed New Order and went on.
Interesting. I also saw you tweet, Christopher Nolan movies. I'm curious, have you seen the new PTA movie yet? The DiCaprio movie?
No, I have not.
Aren't you interested in seeing it?
Yeah.
Are you a Paul Thomas Anderson fan as much as you're a Chris Nolan fan?
Well, no, not as much as I am as Chris Nolan fan. I mean, because that's a high bar. I mean, to me, Christopher Nolan is a modern day Hitchcock. I think what he has done for movies is what Hitchcock did in the 30s, 40s, and 50s and 60s. Nolan is doing now, raising the bar for the kinds of movies that can reach pop culture, a pop culture audience, and still be thoughtful and challenging and provoking. And Hitchcock did it first, and I believe that Christopher Nolan has done it since then in a magnificent way. Paul Thomas Anderson is outstanding. Boogie Nights, to me, is is just a masterpiece. It's so
well,
good.
I think There Will Be Blood is an all-timer, but
yeah.
Tommy, my longtime partner, said the best Paul Thomas Anderson movie is Hard Eight, which I've never seen. It came out in the early 90s, I think. And it's a gambling movie. But yeah, look, I'm going to tell you right now, I didn't love Oppenheimer. I didn't think it was as well done as everybody else did. I actually thought it was hard to follow, and I was familiar with a lot of the details of that. Now, I loved Inception. I loved The Dark Knight. I thought Dunkirk, I heard a lot of people, not like Dunkirk. I thought it was so well done.
Great.
He's great, but I didn't love Oppenheimer. And I've only seen it once, and I'm wondering if that's a movie you've got to see, another time or two before you fall in love with it.
No, it's not. Oppenheimer is as straightforward as any movie that he's done. It's among the least challenging movies, and I think that was part of what made it very popular. And it plays out like a documentary. This is not like The Prestige or Inception, where you get done and you go, "Oh my God, what did I just watch?
Yeah.
I've got to go watch. What I know now, I have to go watch it again." To me, Oppenheimer is a one-watch movie. I thought it was good. I would not put it in the top half of Christopher Nolan's filmography.
Do you think that I kind of feel like Tarantino movies, that's probably for pop culture. I think Tarantino movies are the ones that people love to rank more than any. Even than Nolan movies, even more than Paul Thomas Anderson movies. And I also think that Tarantino movies, pretty much all of them, are movies that just keep getting better every time you watch them. Agree or disagree?
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, this, because the effort that goes into building fascinating characters, the byplay, the acting that he gets out of people. I mean, you feel like if you need to find the best acting any actor has ever done, well, you might want to start to find out if they've been in a Quentin Tarantino movie, because it's probably there. He has launched and relaunched so many great careers and done so many great things with characters and actors. If you want to see Brad Pitt be as good as anything he's ever been in, watching Inglourious Basterds as an example. And that's Brad Pitt.
Nobody knew Christopher Waltz. Travolta was done. Talk about, reemergence of somebody. Yeah, the list goes on and on. But Inglourious Basterds, Pitt's performance is just incredible. I think actually that is my number one of all time. And it was a movie that I loved to begin with, but now to me is an all-time classic. And I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is the same thing. You've got to watch it 2 or 3 times to really fall in love with it.
I'm with you on that. Inglourious Basterds is probably number one for me, but Pulp Fiction has got a special place, right? When Pulp Fiction came out, almost nobody knew who Quentin Tarantino was, and you mentioned Travolta dead. Nobody knew. Samuel
Reservoir
Jackson
Dogs. If you were a fan of Reservoir Dogs, you were waiting for that next release from him, because I do remember the anticipation for Pulp Fiction because Reservoir Dogs was so good.
Right, but I think that never hit any kind of mainstream.
Probably not.
Reservoir Dogs. That was a movie buffs movie at the time it came out. And Pulp Fiction, I mean, it didn't just move the needle. It lifted the needle off the record, advanced it 3 songs, dropped the needle back down, and completely changed what was deemed to be sort of an acceptable level of violence, sexual nature, gratuity. It just rewrote everything of what you thought you could get away with in a movie. And it remains, I don't think you can tell the story of the history of cinema without Pulp Fiction in it.
All right. Well, let's talk about your father's watch and discuss some fantasy football tonight, because your father went through a lot to get that watch to you, young lad.
That's right.
What do we got tonight? Do we have a Philadelphia team that's going to look different offensively or not?
Well, it hasn't been good to this point offensively. Saquon Barkley, let's start there. Here, I'm going to give you some Saquon Barkley stats, some metrics that will shock you and your listeners. He has not topped 88 rushing yards in any game. He's averaging 53 rushing yards per game. And here's some advanced metrics for you. In broken tackle rate among starting running backs. So just we're limiting the pool here to starting running backs. Saquon Barkley, third to last in broken tackle rate. He's fourth from last in yards per carry. He's at 3.2 yards per carry. He is third from last in yards after contact. I mean, this is not the same Saquon Barkley we saw last year. Last year, he had 8 games of over 40 yards. And here we are 5 weeks into the season. He's got 1 game of over 40 yards on a reception. Saquon probably will not have star guard Landon Dickerson tonight. So that doesn't help either. Now, fortunately, the Giants' run defense is garbage. So, we're still starting him, and this could be the breakout game. But
the Giants are not garbage defensively. I don't know what the numbers say, but they have talent on defense. I've watched them now 3 games. They're nasty on defense. They gave up that game Sunday because of 5 turnovers by their offense.
Yeah, and otherwise would have likely won the game. They are good against the pass, where they get the great pass rush from the great defensive line that they've had in place for years now, right? Dexter Lawrence and Brett Burns.
Carter now, that addition in Burns playing at maybe the best level of his career, it seems like.
Yes. But where you attack the Giants is on the ground. They're giving up 5.5 yards per carry. That's second worst in the league. They rank 31st in defensive run rate success, and they rank 25th in yards before contact, which really tells you a lot about how good your run defense is yards before contact. They're 25th there. So the path to victory for the Eagles is on the ground and getting Saquon Barkley going tonight.
That's interesting to me that they're that low. I haven't looked at it. In watching them, they play hard, they play fast. Their pass rush is relentless. They just haven't had the ability to score enough on offense, and the turnovers in New Orleans killed them. I actually like the Giants tonight. I think they're going to have I think Philadelphia is in a bit of free fall right now, not for the season, but just here in the short term and midterm. And those numbers on Saquon are just unbelievable. All right, so I was having this conversation with a friend of mine. He actually is a fan of Flacco from Baltimore days, like I am. Joe Flacco was never an elite quarterback. I'm not saying that. Joe Flacco was, however, a big-time clutch quarterback in their biggest games when he was in Baltimore. But the big difference between Flacco and Jake Browning is that Browning played scared. Flacco's never been afraid of anything in his entire life. The ball is going up for grabs, and T. Higgins and Jamar Chase are going to get opportunities even with that bad offensive line. So is it possible that you end up getting better fantasy numbers from Cincinnati even in losses that are upcoming?
Yeah, it almost can't get worse than it was with Jake Browning, who had looked functional when we had seen him 2 years ago when he had to play a long stretch of games. The real problem that's killing them is, by any measure, the Bengals' offensive line is the league's worst. It is a total disaster. They're dead last in pass block win rate. They're 32nd in Pro Football Focus's pass block ratings. That is what is making it extremely hard for anybody to have success. And here comes Joe Flacco. What has hurt Flacco this year, and why I think the Browns ultimately decided to release him, he was throwing at the league's shortest distance downfield, barely 5 yards. I mean, you just can't cobble together a meaningful offense. 5-yard passes at a time just doesn't cut it. We need to be at closer to 10 yards. I mean, and what worries me now is he's walking into a worse offensive line that's going to give him even less time to throw. And Flacco is it's just going to be all dump off stuff again. You look at the Browns' 2 tight ends, David Njoku and Harold Fannin. They were crushing because they were catching 5-yard passes.
Oh, Fanning's good.
Right up the line of script.
He's a rookie tight end he might be the best tight end of this rookie class with Loveland and with Warren. I mean, Warren's playing great, but Fanning's a talent. I don't know if you've seen him at all, and I don't know what the numbers are on him, but he looks good to me.
He looks good, and unlike Warren, he's doing it sharing time with Njoku. And, they work a little differently. Njoku's usually in line. Fannin's usually standing in the slot. But still, that's, what Fannin has done is pretty remarkable. And anybody who just discarded him because he went to Wake Forest or Bowling Green, shame on you. Now, interesting that this trade happened in the division to get Joe Flacco, because a little bit like the Jahan Dotson trade that was in division, this is you don't trade within your division if it's going to come back and haunt you and make you look like an idiot when this player comes back and knocks you out of the playoffs and gives you losses. The Browns have to feel pretty confident that Joe Flacco is cooked, or I don't think they would have sent him to a division.
Well, I think they've also settled in on we're in major rebuild mode now, right? I don't know.
Yes.
You might be right. Look, I mean, I doubt they're fearful of Flacco going to Cincinnati and lighting it up and keeping Cincinnati in the race, but Cleveland's not going to be in the race, I don't think, at this point.
So, but I mean, here's the thing. Here's why, if I'm Andrew Berry, the GM for Cleveland, and Kevin Stefanski, who I love, I'm not ready to give up quite yet, because I have arguably the NFL's best defense, and I'm playing almost everybody close. If I can just get functional quarterbacking, then, all of a sudden, every game can be a win. And I don't know that Dylan Gabriel's answer there, or that the answer is even on roster. And that's a whole different issue. By the way, since they let Baker Mayfield go, which was only 2.5 seasons ago, here's who the Cleveland Browns have started at quarterback: Jacoby Brissett, PJ Walker, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Jeff Driscoll, Joe Flacco, Deshaun Watson, Jameis Winston, Dorian Thompson-Robinson again, Joe Flacco again, Bailey Zappi, and as of last week, Dylan Gabriel. All that in 2.5 seasons since they decided Baker Mayfield was not the quarterback of the future.
Do you think, though, I think we talked about this last week, the quarterbacks and the resurrection of so many of these quarterbacks, the game that Darnold and Baker Mayfield participated in last week is just, was an epic football game for quarterback play. Baker Mayfield was never going to become what Baker Mayfield is now in Cleveland. He needed the brief moment with Sean McVay, the Liam Cohen. He needed the change of scenery. It's just like guys that were here for 20 years during the Snyder era. You never forgave them for, look at the coaches, the McVays, the O'Connells, the Kyle Shanahan's, all the coaches that were here. You don't forgive them for not having it work out here because you knew how bad the organization was. Same thing with Cleveland. He was never going to be great in Cleveland, was he?
Probably you're right that he probably needed to hit the reset button somewhere else. The only reason I believe it could have ultimately worked out in Cleveland is exactly. You have a 2-time Coach of the Year winner in Stefanski. I still believe, despite all the futility that they've had there, Stefanski to me is still one of the 10 best coaches in the NFL, and he might have been able to turn it around.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about our team. How do you like Bill Krosky Merritt?
Well, okay, you called it last week, and I've been waiting.
Did I call it? You said you texted me and said I called it. I said that if they end up going in one direction, it would be him. I think I did say that. But
yes.
But anyway, obviously this kid's got some talent, and he is now becoming a fantasy darling, I'm assuming.
Yes, he is. He's the big mover for this week. You didn't call it by game. You didn't say it's going to happen this week, but you did say that Jacory Krosky Merritt is ultimately going to separate himself, and he did. He got double the snaps, double the carries as anyone else. He looked good doing it, and he got the team's only goal line carry. And now he faces the Bears Monday night. Last we saw the Bears before they went on bye last week, they had just given up 200 rushing yards to the Raiders.
Right.
So last year, Chicago allowed the most fantasy points in the league. This year, Chicago's improved all the way to the 4th most fantasy points allowed to opposing runners. So it is green light for Jacory Krosky Merritt. Don't have my rankings in front of me for this week, but I think he's sitting somewhere around running back 15 for this week. So I'm dusting him off for sure. Noah Brown comes back. So that'll be nice. And that will mean you can get Noah Brown running on the right side of the field, which he always does. And I know you probably know this. Your team is very unique in that your receivers run like 90% of the routes from one side of the field or other. McLaurin on the left, Noah Brown on the right. McLaurin not going to go, correct?
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't think
we'll
so
know
either.
more
So it'll
today,
be-
but I mean, it's
Yeah.
a long way till Monday night. I guess there's a chance, but I don't think it's a good one.
Chris Moore gets the Terry. Yeah.
Yeah, Noah Brown practiced yesterday, so we'll see. I mean, Luke McCaffrey certainly played and has picked it up a little bit, and I think they're, a little bit happier with him now. Back to Krosky Merritt for a moment.
Yeah.
Look, if the matchup is a perfect one, and you already, explained it, the Bears currently the 31st ranked rush defense, Washington number 1 in the league in rush offense. Rico Dowdle had 206 yards last week, and he's going against a bad defensive football team in Dallas. I would think he's way up there on the running back list this week.
Yeah, he is. We call him the Dowdler. I don't know what it means, but it sounds vaguely dirty, so we like to call him the Dowdler. Went berserk last week, 206
sounds
yards.
Illegal.
Yeah, it might be illegal too. That's right. Yeah, well, putting up 206 rushing yards for Rico Dowdle probably is illegal. Miami was that opponent, and somehow he actually goes to an easier defense this week in Dallas. 4 out of 5 opposing backfields have had big days against Dallas, including last week. Breece Hall, 155 yards. Cowboys ranked dead last in run defense success rate. So, yeah, Rico Dowdle, automatic start this week, which you did not think you'd end up saying, but Chuba Hubbard not expected to play again. So, yeah.
Charch, the Bill Krosky Merritt won the FedEx Ground Award award this week. Second time he's won it this year. He won it in week 1 too. I think that they literally didn't know that Rico Dowdle, because he plays for the Panthers in a game against the Dolphins, rushed for a season-high 206 yards. I don't know how he did not win that award.
Right.
It was 9 yards a carry. It's not like they gave it to him 40 times. Pretty impressive performance. All right, what else do we need to know about the weekend?
Well, a couple of things here. I think we could. I think if there's a player to avoid that you would normally start, I think it's Justin Fields, the Jets quarterback.
Yeah.
He faces his toughest challenge of the year this week, but he's been really good. He's played 3 full games. He got knocked out of 1 and he missed 1. In those 3 full games, Justin Fields, fantasy quarterback 2, fantasy quarterback 4, and fantasy quarterback 7. I mean, that is like
terrible.
Josh Allen level stuff. And he's not a good passer, right? But
he's terrible. I thought he was
his way.
I mean, he got all of that late, right, in the game on Sunday.
A lot of it was garbage time, for sure.
Yeah.
Here's Denver. Get this. This season, whole season, Denver's allowed 15 quarterback rushing yards on the year, and they have faced Daniel Jones and Jalen Hurts. Jones had 2 rushing yards. Hurts had 3. So if you're going to take the wheels off of Justin Fields and have to rely on his passing against the Broncos, that's a scenario where Justin Fields could be sitting on a very bad game. And frankly, the offense was better with Tyrod Taylor. And there's a non-zero chance that if the Jets are looking at their 6th consecutive loss to open a season, that Justin Fields gets yanked from this game.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the first half. Justin Fields, I always thought there was a chance for him. He just doesn't see it as a passer. I mean, he holds he takes some of the ugliest sacks after holding the ball of anybody, but he certainly produces fantasy-wise late in games in which they're getting blown out, and maybe he'll do it again Sunday in London. Don't you love early Sunday morning football? It's the best. I don't even care what the matchup is as long as it's on. Thanks, Charge.
The Vikings Browns last week set the all-time Europe TV record for viewership.
Really? It was a good football game.
In the U.S. I didn't say it very clearly there, but for all of the European games that there's been, that game was the most watched game in the U.S. So apparently people love getting out of bed early, and I had to do the pregame show at 5:45 in the morning. But people love it.
Well, it was a good game too, and I thought Dylan Gabriel actually looked legitimate, and he's just small. That's his problem. All right, I got to run. Thanks as always.
Okay, thanks, my man. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
At Paul Charchian on X on Twitter for all of your fantasy information. You're going to hear what Steve Suter said about Jaden Daniels on Sunday next.
Alrighty, happy Thursday, everybody. We start off with the Browns. They're going into full fire sale mode after trading Greg Newsome to the Jaguars last night, moving to playoff baseball. The Tigers forced a Game 5 versus the Seattle Mariners by a score of 9-3. The Chicago Cubs, they held off the Milwaukee Brewers by a score of 4-3 to cut their series lead in half. The Toronto Blue Jays eliminate the New York Yankees from postseason contention in a 5-2 victory. And the Philadelphia Phillies lit up the Dodgers by a score of 8-2 to stave off elimination. To hockey last night, the Caps, they fall to the Bruins in their season opener 3-1. A tight game where the Caps had the upper hand early, but unable to capitalize on power plays and scoring chances. Bruins score first. Caps finally get one back on the power play, and then moments later, the Bruins retake the lead, and that was all she wrote. Empty netter makes it 3-1. Caps fall to the Bruins. Tonight, we have an NFC East matchup on tap for Thursday Night Football. The Eagles making the bus ride to East Rutherford to take on the New York Giants. Kickoff at 8:15. Pregame starts right here on the Team 980 at 8 p.m. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1, and you can catch Den's office throughout all of football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
From Vienna, Jeff, FedEx Air and Ground Awards are fan votes. Thank you. That explains it. Appreciate that. I did not know that. I am wrong for blaming FedEx for picking Bill as the Ground Award winner. I get it now. I mean, that was the most watched game. His performance was viewed by many more people, and the Dolphins-Panthers game was viewed by very few. And was really an afterthought in any sort of post, Sunday highlight show. I mean, but the point is that Rico Dowdle rushed for 206 yards and was clearly, clearly had the best day as a running back at 9 yards per carry on 23 carries of any running back performance this year. But that makes sense. I appreciate you sending that to me. All right, so. Have talked about Steve Suter a little bit here over the last 3 weeks. He is doing film breakdowns of the Skins games for me once a week on the podcast, and I'm playing some of it back on the radio show. He's excellent. For those of you who don't know who Steve is, Steve calls the games with Johnny Holiday, the Maryland games on the Maryland Football Radio Network, which we carry. By the way, 3:30 kick on Saturday against Nebraska. You can hear it right here on the Team 980. Steve was one of the greatest punt returners in the history of college football. When he left Maryland in 2004, he was the all-time ACC punt return leader in multiple categories. Same thing NCAA record-wise. He was an incredible punt returner and not a bad receiver either. He's just excellent in breaking down the film. He's got a passion for it, and he's been doing a great job on looking at these games, the All-22, and helping us with a level of expertise that you don't really get off of a lot of the internet film breakdowns, unless it's a legitimate film breakdown person. Cooley was the best ever. I'm not replacing Cooley ever, but Cooley doesn't do it anymore. He's not interested in even football. He doesn't watch a lot of games, and he just doesn't have the time for it. So the part that I wanted you to hear was just Steve talking about Jaden's return and the performance that he had.
Jaden was great. I thought Jaden was awesome. Rewatching the game, going through the All-22 play-by-play, I thought his timing was really good. I gave him 2 negative plays, and the one was on right after their third possession. It's a zone read. He pulls it. Derwin James is a really good athlete out there. You're not going to fool him. It probably should have been a give, but the play was going to get blown up anyway, even if he gave it, so not that big of a deal. The very next play, he missed his lane on a deep crosser. That's the standard NFL throw. He's got to put it on him. And that was it. Those were the only 2 negative plays I gave him. The rest were just Jaden Daniels doing what he does. And I thought his timing in the pocket and knowing when to scramble and having the feel of when to extend the play was all perfect. He wasn't leaving the pocket when he had open receivers. And when he needed to leave the pocket, it was because things were covered, because the Chargers had played a good defense in the secondary, and he knew he needed to make a play with his feet, and he did. I was really impressed. There was a couple times, there was one time that they blew the coverage. I don't know if you can remember the broadcast play, but it was one of those, they had a delay of the game, and he's late at the line of scrimmage, trying to change play, trying to change protection, and they leave the DN unblocked. So they missed that. That's not all on him. That's all up on the line too. They just didn't get it right. But then the next play, and it's the third down to McNichols, where he shakes Tariq Steele on the sideline on the big 3rd and 10 to get the first down. It was, like a huge play in the ball game.
The McNichols play, you said?
Yeah.
It was 3rd and 11. Yeah, and he great run after catch, right?
Great run after catch. But so he's early in my opinion on that Daniels, but it's because the play prior they blow the protection, so he gets a little antsy. On that play, he swings it to McNichols and he shakes him and gets the first down. Great job, right? Good individual effort by McNichols. But he's got McCaffrey on an easy drag coming across formation if he just holds the ball for another second. But I think his clock's messed up because they just messed up the protection. So no harm, no foul, but he could have had an easier read. Other than that, so then you come back to, and I want to find the play here.
So I'm seeing the McCaffrey. Yeah, he unloads that quickly. And by the way, it's 3rd and 10. So what do you think? He thinks like the chances of essentially, a check down getting the first down are not high. and he went to it immediately. Because now that I see this, I thought maybe it was a design sort of swing, but that's a check down, correct?
So I would say that. I would say it was design swing only if he was hot, but they're not hot. They're bringing six, but they're getting it picked up. So, Washington's offensive line's picking up the pressure.
Yeah.
So he's not hot off of this blitz read at all. So he should feel comfortable enough that he can stay in the pocket and maybe go through a read or two. But he's a little antsy and he swings it out there, and it's just quick timing. Yes, you can dig him like, look, you got to stay in the pocket here. We're picked up on the pass protection. You're gonna have McCaffrey come wide open here across the field, and he's gonna say, yeah, you're right. I probably could have sat on that, but I wanted to get the ball out. I wasn't sure if we were getting it picked up because we just missed the pickup the last play. So I can see how that gets in your head, but I mean, you get away with it, right?
They run
make the play.
Do they run a super high number of crossers?
I can't say that they do because they haven't seen they did see some man coverage here from the Chargers. They saw, you got to scout the team prior. And if you're going to think you're going to get a lot of man coverage, then yes, it behooves you to run a lot of crosses. And they're hard to cover. You run away from man coverage instead of running curls and stick routes, right? So I think that's game dependent.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Big tackle.
All right. Continue with Jaden.
Yeah, so Jaden was great. His timing was great. Decision making was great. Ability to extend plays was really good. You mentioned a couple of the balls. I mean, the McCaffrey ball is an absolute 10 out of 10. That's a perfect pass. You can't run out there and hand it to him any better in position because the defender's on him. So he made throws when he needed to. You mentioned the third down to Lane. That's a big time throw. Then he stayed in the pocket and hitting Debo on crossing routes. I'm telling you, I didn't see any mental mistakes, and he made plays and extended it when he had to. It's the highest score I've given any player on the team since I started grading. So that'll give you a factor of what I thought about his play.
What about his accuracy?
And he just looks different, right? Sorry to jump.
Please.
Different. When he decides to take off, it's different. It looks different. I mean, it's Lamar-esque. He's the closest to Lamar in the league for sure. But his first step is just so fast. It's night and day from even Mariota, who's an athletic quarterback. When he decides to move in the pocket and he wants to go get some yards, those first two steps are just really quick. And it's such an advantage to have that as in your arsenal. Just go to the third quarter, minute 14 seconds. I want you to see this. This is one of my favorite plays, and it's because of going back. So the possession prior was when they blew the protection. Then he throws the throws the swing a little quick because he does this in the pocket when they bring up pressure. This is the next possession.
Yep.
And you can see here, his clock almost goes off again, and he almost wants to take off. You can see this little hitch. He almost pulls the ball down. He's like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And then he fights it. He fights his own urges here, stays back in the pocket, says, wait a minute, and he delivers a perfect ball to Debo on the cross route. So that, to me, shows so much maturity because he was early on the previous play. They probably talked about it on the sideline. They probably went over it. He probably watched the iPad, realized that he wasn't hot, didn't need to swing it as quickly, probably gave himself a mental check. Hey, man, you got to be stronger in the pocket here. And he comes back out here, and he almost does it. I just love watching it. He's about to pull the ball down and run, and then he says, no, like that's how quick his brain thinks, no, man, I can stay in his pocket another second.
I love watching this from the end zone view because you see that
right?
and you're like, oh, he so badly wants to. It's funny that you brought this play up because this is this is a play that I wanted to tell you about or ask you about because real quickly, first of all, if he does decide to run, he probably gets it. Right?
Yeah, correct. Yeah,
I mean,
that's the advantage of having that.
It wouldn't have been like the worst decision ever because if he actually decides to run it, I mean, I don't know. There are a couple of players out there, but with his speed and his elusiveness, he's certainly going to get close to it. But this was one of the plays that I was going to ask you about because in the opener against the Giants and then even against Green Bay, you didn't do the Giant film, but you did the Green Bay film. We talked a little bit about he's just off a tick accuracy-wise. It's not like he's off badly, but last year the accuracy was just impeccable. This throw to Debo is a bit behind Debo. He makes the catch. It's where a receiver can make a catch. It's not a bad throw, but he doesn't lead him in this case. It's a little bit behind him, right? Did you see? This would be an example. Did you see that as anything that you would have said? Yeah, that I could have downgraded him for some of the throws that he made that weren't perfect. Like he was high to Ertz at the end of the first half and missed that, or it was catchable.
Yeah, I mean, I gave that's a drop to me. The Ertz
it was
ball.
catchable.
I mean,
yeah,
and that's your job, Ertz. You're not in there to block at all. You are the receiving tight end. It's 2-minute drill. You got to have that. But sure, you could say that's a little high. Here, I don't want to, act like I'm defending him too much, but it's because that little hitch he doesn't really get to step in this ball because now the offensive lineman's kind of in his lap.
Yeah.
And I would say that probably hurt his father a little bit. Watch this from the end zone again and watch Chris Paul. I mean, he mauls 99 down into all of his other defenders. Then he picks up the twist, and he's one-arming both of these dudes.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I'm on the Chris Paul Pro Bowl early bandwagon. I mean, I'm telling you what, he's the best lineman I've watched every game consistently.
Wow.
He's a good player. And when you get the other guard back, this line could be crazy good. Tunsil showed himself. This was his best game. He actually looked like dominant in the first half and handled the edge. I know they don't have their best pass rusher, but there was no inkling of a pass rush coming from the left side. So by far, Tunsil's best game. But Paul was consistent, and these guys up front just played really well.
Real quickly, 2 other plays. Back to the McCaffrey throw. I observed this last year with him, and even at LSU. He doesn't have to actually step in to a deep throw. It's like it's a flick of the wrist. Do you know what I mean? Like some guys have to kind of wind up and step. Yeah, and it's just a flick of the wrist for him.
Yeah, and it's just arm strength and arm mechanics, and he's just but you either have that or you don't have that.
Right.
And he's got it. I mean, the touch on it was just so good because look.
Quarter 13-16. It's 10-10 there, the opening drive of the second half. And I wrote this one down because to me, like this is where last year as a rookie quarterback, it's like he's so advanced. Like he sees it. So it's been so advanced for a player this young.
Yeah, this is. I don't want to minimize that because it is a good play, but it's a good play call, knowing the coverage you're going to get. So you pre-snap. You want zone coverage for this,
right?
Because that's a spot route, what we call. That's a spot route by Tay, and you're going to get the running back to pull that flat defender out. So pre-snap. So this is clear to me that pre-snap, he reads this as zone coverage. Whether right now I would call it before the snap, that looks like a cover 4. That was what we would call cover 4, which is a zone coverage. So you're still going to get a flat defender coming from inside the box. So this play is going to work. Now at the snap of the ball, it changes to cover 3. You see that top safety flies down to go cover the flat.
Yeah.
But it's still the same principle. You're going to have a flat defender, and you're going to have a deep defender, and you're going to have an inside the box guy. So his pre-snap, post-snap reads are right on the money. And it's tall timing, right? He can't wait at all. Otherwise, this will get broken up. So, yes, I agree. It's a pre-snap read, and it's a post-snap confirmation, and it's happening in a split second. And that's a great first down play.
Yeah.
And you're off to the races.
And I think that's part of it is that, he's a young quarterback, and he all last year, same thing. He sees it pre-snap. He understands what's happening post, and then he's got the throwing mechanics with the quick release that makes that play like a natural for him always.
Yeah, right. And so if you become a team that sees a lot of zone coverage, then you're going to call more of these type of plays, and you're going to be able to see this more and more. Now, what?
Well, they saw a lot of zone coverage last year because they didn't want him to run. So
yeah, I was just going to say, you're going to get that because you don't want to play. It's what happened to Washington the first series of the game. They ran man coverage, turned their backs to Herbert, and he busted out a 40-yarder because you lose contain and the rush lanes, and all you guys are covering man-to-man defense.
Right.
So yes, that is a Jason Daniels thing that you have to call more zone coverage against them. And so they should have a bunch of these, 5 of these ready to go at every down and distance, 1st and 10, 2nd and 6. If you think you're getting the zone, then you call this play and you let Jaden Daniels do what he does.
I actually have one more play that I want to ask you about. I lied. The last play was not the last Jaden play that I wanted to talk to you about. If you go to the second drive of the game, they went 3 and out to start. Second drive of the game, they had a first down on a Krosky Merritt run, and it's like a 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, and he scrambles. This is when he slipped, and he ended up changing his shoes after he slipped. Do you think that he should have thrown the check down to McNichols?
Okay, yeah. So I see the play you're talking about now. Man, this could have been real crappy. So go to the end zone view here.
Yeah, if he had pitched it to him, are you going to tell me to lateral?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He could have been real crappy. But right off the bat, I want to say no because he's not. This isn't hot. This is a blown protection. So Wiley is responsible for that. I can't see who the number is there. That's Henley, right? Number 0.
Yeah.
But on the snap of the ball, Wiley checks him and he doesn't rush right away. So Wiley thinks he's going to be a dropper, but he just leaves his eyesight too quick. Daniels thinks this is picked up. So Henley coming into his face right away, I think, startles him because he doesn't think he's going to have a free rusher on him. And so now it's instinct. I got this free rusher bailing down on me in the A-gap because he's not hot. This isn't a hot route where he should automatically go to McNichols.
Right.
This should be picked up, and he should be able to look downfield and hit one of these 2 crossing routes that you see going in front of him.
Got it.
But that guy flashes in front of him. He's in the A-gap, and he's like, oh, my gosh, now I got to make a play. So they're lucky that he even got out of the pocket here and got, 3-4 yards.
Right.
But if he could have parlayed this into a pitch here, then you're talking.
It's a touchdown. Yeah.
Then you're like, top 10, number 1.
Yeah, I mean, I said that. I said, like, right when he starts towards the line of scrimmage, he could unload it real quickly because he already sucks the defense up. Or if he's beyond, he could throw an actual pass lateral across to McNichols, and then McNichols literally takes it 65, 60 yards for a touchdown. Okay.
So when I'm watching it, I'm not going to knock him for not being able to ad-lib on a backyard play.
Yeah.
His initial read, he thinks he should be picked up. They blow the coverage up front, and now he's just got to read and react.
You think Kingsbury and Quinn get upset if he ends up lateraling that?
Not if it goes for a touchdown.
Right. I mean, see,
and then you don't take a hit. I think it's a pretty safe lateral.
Yeah.
For all intents and purposes, but you don't see many people make this type of play.
No, you don't. But, you also don't have a quarterback that puts the defense in conflict as much as he does. And those opportunities do exist once he moves towards the line of scrimmage as a runner. I mean, you get a lot of opportunities because they're coming up 9 times out of 10, right?
I'm watching it again now. I keep replaying it. It's certainly, he definitely looks, now I think he's looking at the defender, whether or not he's going to grab his leg. I was going to say, it looks like he looked over to the left at McNichols, but I think he's looking at the defender there.
All right.
But even if he'd have fake pitch it right there and then cut up, it would have been nice. But
all right. His grade.
He's A+. His grade was, I said it earlier, it's the highest grade I've given any player since I've been doing it. I didn't find any flaws in his game. You're nitpicking, right? We're kind of nitpicking this, right? We're nitpicking if we're trying to find flaws in him. So he was great. Really good game for him to come back. The rust was really short-lived, in my opinion. You mentioned a couple of balls that were misthrown, sure. but overall, really good performance from him. I'll give him an A+ for sure.
He had some really good stuff on Bill Krosky Merritt. He still believes, by the way, the coverage, and we saw it on the first 3 drives before the Quan Martin hit on Quentin Johnston. He said they're still really struggling in man coverage and communication, but pass rush can certainly mask those back-end problems, and they've got to be consistent. He absolutely loves Armstrong and Kinlaw so far. You can find, the entire film breakdown on my podcast at thekevinsheehanshow.com. All right, we've got NFL power rankings. I've got some smell test picks. Are we getting coordinators that are talking today? Should be. Joe Witt Jr. and Kingsbury today, so we'll have some of that sound, or certainly some of what they have said before the end of the show. I do want to tell you about IHOP. This segment was brought to you by IHOP. Introducing the IHOP Value Menu, where all your breakfast faves are just $6 each every day. Where else can you get a big, filling, sit-down breakfast for only $6? Get to your happy plates with the $6 IHOP Value Menu, available every day at IHOP. $7 in some locations. Man, it is hard this week to do an NFL power rankings. After the two remaining unbeatens lost, Buffalo and Philadelphia. By the way, that was the earliest in an NFL season that we have lost all of the unbeaten teams since 2014. In that particular season, nobody won more than 12 games in the regular season. 16-game schedule, but there were no 13-3s, no 14-2s. There were several 12-4s, but nobody won more than 12 games that year. The 72 Dolphins cracked the champagne, uncorked it pretty early this year. Look, I am going to go 1 through 5 because I think the only easy call right now is the number one team in the league, and that's the Detroit Lions. I think the Lions right now deserve to be in a power rankings, the number one team. It's not just record based. They're 4-1. Their one loss coming in the opener, week 1 to Green Bay. They've been super impressive since. They're really good on both sides of the ball. Healthy defensively, we knew that they could be really good. Now, they lost corner Terrian Arnold. That's a big loss, especially considering they've got the Chiefs, the Bucks, the Vikings, Washington, and Philadelphia in terms of their next 5 games. We're going to learn a lot about the Lions. All right, KC at Arrowhead, Tampa, the Minnesota Vikings, Washington, and the Eagles are the next 5 games for the Lions. But I'm impressed with everything they do offensively. The key to that team is healthy on defense and then protect Goff. And you protect him with a really good running game and then everything that comes off that running game. When he is play action off of a real threat to run the football, man, they protect, and what an offensive line that is. Detroit, for me, is the obvious number one team in the league through 5 weeks. Of course, subject to change. Number 2, this is where, you got a lot of options. I'll go Buffalo, even though they lost. And I'll chalk it up to, they had 3 turnovers in the game, uncharacteristic. I think there's a concern defensively with them. I really do. And let's face it, the 4 wins they got, the Ravens on opening night, we've seen what they've turned out to be defensively, even before the injuries, not great on defense. And then they beat the Jets, Dolphins, and Saints. And, you go back to that Saint game after they lost to the Patriots, they were up 21-16 midway through the fourth quarter with the Saints on the move. Can you imagine if they had lost to the Saints that day? They were 14.5, 15-point favorites. So I actually think they got a tough spot Monday night in Atlanta. That's the first game Monday night. Our game is the second game. But I'm going to put Buffalo there because of Josh Allen and James Cook. And, I think they're the second best team, but there's a lot of candidates for it. Look, I moved a 3-2 team into the 3 spot. I moved Denver all the way up to the 3 spot. Denver should be, worst case, 4-1. They lost to the Colts after committing a penalty on a missed field goal at the gun, giving the Colts a second opportunity, a stupid penalty. And then they lost at the gun to the Chargers. I mean, they got 2 losses on walk-off field goals, both on the road against Indy and the Chargers. Now, they've beaten the Titans, a bad Bengals team, but they went to Philadelphia and proved it. Nick Bonito's an absolute stud and star. I love everything about their attack. It's smart, and they've got players. Cortland Sutton's been a good player. J.K. Dobbins is having an excellent season. They've got that rookie in R.J. Harvey. He can do some stuff. I think there are a lot of, potentials here. I just don't like Philadelphia right now. Not now. I mean, I think they'll get it together, but right now I've got Denver as the 3rd best team in the league. That seems crazy. Number 4 is another team, 3-2, coming off a loss. I just still love the Rams. I really like the LA Rams. I think they're better than the Niners. I know they didn't win the game, but I think over the next 12, the Rams will prove out to be the better team. I think they're just loaded on both sides of the ball. And Puka Nacua right now is a legitimate MVP candidate on his way. I mean, he is trending, and tracking towards the greatest season in the history of the NFL for a wide receiver. And they have so much, they got so many more things. Kyron Williams in the backfield, obviously. And the Stafford Devontae Adams connection is starting to work. Tutu Atwell's a really good deep threat. They've got speed. I like the Rams. I've got a 3-2 team at number 3 and a 3-2 team at number 4. And then at number 5, I'm going to put Denton's, team that he loved before the season started. They won, the game of the year in terms of just the quality of the game. I'm going to put Tampa Bay in at 5. Baker Mayfield's a legitimate MVP candidate as well. Had one of the great, road quarterback games in Seattle in recent memory. 29 of 33 for 379, 2 touchdowns. It wasn't a perfect passer rating, but it was a 90.7 QBR. He had some effective runs in the game. Basically didn't have a rushing attack. No Bucky Irving in the game on Sunday against Seattle. He did it all with the rookie receiver from Ohio State, Igbuka, and Godwin was back. Didn't have Mike Evans in the game. I mean, they didn't have Bucky Irving or Mike Evans in the game. I think the only thing you say about Tampa is they're sitting there at 4-1, and they squeaked by Atlanta, they squeaked by Houston, they squeaked by the Jets, and they squeaked by Seattle. And they were getting their, what's handed to them by the Eagles until late when they got back into that game. I mean, I left off San Francisco, Green Bay. Who else did I leave off? KC. I mean, they're a 2-3 football team. Indy, didn't put them in the top 5. Jacksonville didn't put them in the top 5. You could make cases for other teams. You know what? You could start to make the case if you really believe that Jaden Daniels is going to be Jaden Daniels the rest of the way, that Washington is certainly going to climb, but they've got a brutal, road ahead here. There it is. That's my top 5. Detroit 1, Buffalo 2, Denver 3, the Rams 4, and Tampa Bay 5. Max, go ahead.
Kevin, you left my number 1 team off of your top 5.
You don't have Detroit at number 1?
No, and here's why. So I got the Packers at number 1 still. They're coming. I think they're beneficiaries of the bye week for me, because last time we saw them, they're coming off a tie to the best offense in the NFL with the Dallas Cowboys. They played really well, just coming back, but at the same time, Packers still beat the Lions. They own their numbers. They got to beat the best to be the best. So that's kind of my line of thinking on that. I've just got to see the Lions.
You got a 2-1-1 team as the number 1 team in the league.
I know.
I think it's a hard conversation. I'm not killing you for it. I think if Detroit played Green Bay this Sunday, Detroit's the better team.
Yeah.
I mean, week 1 is always a little bit of a fake. Like, by the way, you pointed something out. They played, statistically the best offensive team in Dallas, and they played the best defensive team the week before in Cleveland. And they came out of that 0-1-1 in those 2 games.
It is tough, but I mean, like I said, got to beat them to get ahead of them.
Right.
So my next one at number 3 is going to be the Buffalo Bills coming off a loss.
Wait a minute, 2 you've got Detroit.
Yes,
Just
2 out of
checking.
Detroit.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
right.
my 1 too. NFC North looking good right now. Bills coming off a loss. I got them at number 3. I still think they're going to make some noise in the AFC playoffs, but they can certainly be beaten like we saw on Sunday. So I think that one of these teams that might be rounding out my top 5 could beat them in the playoffs, especially with how good their defense is. Number 4, my Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're so fun. Baker's a dog. Did you see him talking to the Seahawks fans pregame when he was in the tunnel before the team came out?
I did not.
Oh, it was, yeah. Baker was talking a gang of that S. So he's a dog. Emeka Egbuka's incredible. Bill Krosky-Merritt, Rookie of the Week, but Emeka Egbuka certainly right on the heels of him. Certainly could have won that award. So Bucs are at number 4, and then number 5, the Broncos. That defense is incredible. Their offensive line is the best in the NFL. Bo Nix just needs to settle down, calm, just read the defense and make the throw. Because his offensive line is doing everything for him right now. So my top 5: Packers, Lions, Bills, Bucks, Broncos. My outside looking in, I do have the Rams, the Eagles, Indianapolis, and Washington. You mentioned the Jags. I'm not fully sold on them yet. They did beat the Chiefs. Credit to them, big win. But the Chiefs are not what we've seen the past couple of years, so I think they're getting a little bit too much credit, especially on the books this week against Seattle. So give me Seattle this weekend too. That's going to be my smell test pick.
Is there a team that we're not even considering right now that 4 weeks from now, 5 weeks from now, we could be like, whoa, how do we miss that?
Texans, I think, could turn it around.
That is exactly the one I was thinking about.
Yeah, I
think their defense is so good, and I think
incredible.
Stroud's good. And they haven't had Mixon. Yeah, they play Seattle. They've got a bye week this week, but then it's Seattle, and they've got the 49ers and Broncos and Jags after that, so we'll find out. But I think the Texans are long from being away from being dead in that division. I think they definitely have a chance to be a part of that mix. And I would also, just say the Chiefs too, but I think that they're not far from top of mind.
Right.
Yeah. That's exactly the team that I was thinking about. I'll give you one other team that I was thinking about a little bit. I mean, I think people know that Seattle's a good football team, but I'm going to throw out Atlanta. I think the Falcons are actually a little bit of a dangerous football team. This Monday night game coming off their bye week against the Bills off that loss, I think that this is upset alert for the Bills in Atlanta. And then they've got, teams like the Dolphins and the Patriots and the Panthers and the Saints and the Jets ahead. I hope that Atlanta doesn't get into the mix because you're going to lose that tiebreaker, with the Falcons, as you would with Green Bay if they don't win the division in wild card races. Washington's 2 losses, remember, are NFC losses. That's not good. Last year, one of the benefits of their early losses were that, after Tampa Bay in the opener, they were AFC losses, remember, to Baltimore and then to Pittsburgh. So that's always a benefit. You don't want your losses to be conference losses. And they've got 2 of them, and they've got 2 against teams that one team's definitely going to be in the mix, the Packers, I think. And I think the Falcons are sneaky. I think Penix Jr. can play, and they've got talent. The Bears are interesting because they've got the same kind of level of talent around the quarterback question. Interesting. I think the Bears, though, with Caleb may be in a better situation coaching-wise, but don't count out the Falcons. I bet you people would say don't count out the Bears after they won 2 games in a row. This is a big game for Chicago Monday night. Like, they're probably looking at this thing, if you're a Bears fan, right? And they lost the first 2. They got blown out by Detroit, and Ben Johnson in Detroit. Ben Johnson got blown out by his former team in week 2. And then they came back and they hammered the Cowboys, and they just barely got by the Raiders, who aren't very good. But if you're a Chicago fan, you're thinking, we win Monday night. And we're 3-2, and we got the Saints after that. We've got the Bengals and Giants coming up. We could be in the mix in this first year of Ben Johnson. This is huge for Chicago, huge for Washington too. Don't get me wrong, but it's a huge game for Chicago, and they've got a lot of motivation after what happened last year. Interesting league right now, man. No more unbeatens. There doesn't seem to be a juggernaut team. I mean, Detroit might be the closest thing to it in terms of what it looks like right now. You're 2 undefeateds through the first 4 weeks. One was a bit question marky anyway in Philadelphia. Now it's a bigger question mark. Buffalo losing that game, and you look at the Patriots schedule, you're like, look, the AFC East isn't even safe anymore. Baltimore is at 1-4, maybe on the verge of going to 1-5, but they're favored to win their division. Just some weird stuff, man, so far. It's great. There's just so much parity this year. And there's high-level parity, especially in the NFC when you consider Detroit, Tampa, the Rams, the 49ers, the Packers, the Eagles, Washington, and some people are going to start saying teams like Dallas and Chicago could put in, and Atlanta could be in the mix. The Panthers and the Saints are the worst teams I think you'd consider the worst teams in the NFC, and they're coming off wins. The Giants might be the worst team in the NFC, but they won 2 weeks ago against the Chargers, and it was just turnovers that cost them against the Saints. And they might be coming off a win going into their next week's game after tonight. And that's where we're going to go next. Smell test after this.
All right. Happy Thursday, everybody. Here's what's happening and what you missed last night. The Cleveland Browns are going into full fire sale mode after they traded Greg Newsome to the Jaguars. We got some playoff baseball last night. The Tigers forced a game 5 versus the Mariners by a score of 9-3. The Chicago Cubs, they hold off the Milwaukee Brewers 4-3 to cut the series lead in half. The Toronto Blue Jays eliminate the New York Yankees from postseason contention in a 5-2 victory. And the Philadelphia Phillies lit up the LA Dodgers 8-2 to stave off elimination. To hockey, Caps, they fall to the Bruins in the season opener by a score of 3-1. A tight game where the Caps had the upper hand early, but unable to capitalize on the power play and on scoring chances. Bruins, they get the first goal. Caps get one back later on the power play, and then moments later, Bruins retake the lead, and that was all she wrote. Tonight, we got some NFC East football on tap for Thursday night. Eagles making the bus ride to East Rutherford to take on the New York Giants at MetLife. Kickoff at 8:15. Pregame starts right here on the Team 980 at 8 p.m. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live every day from 10 to 1. You can catch Denton's office during all football season. Don't forget to hit the like button whenever you do decide to join us and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
All right, full-fledged smell test tomorrow with a lot of games. I think I'm going to have this week. I only had 7 last week. 4-3 was the record. So it has started off this year pretty good. 6 straight winning weeks, 6-0 in terms of more wins than losses. Overall, 40, 26, and 4 on the season, hitting at 61%, just short of 61% on the season. So I said earlier that there were going to be multiple smell test picks. There's actually just going to be one. And I'll tell you what the other one almost was. But just a little bit more information has me off it. But the Giants tonight plus the points. There are a lot of 7s out there, but there are plenty of 7.5s out there. So I'll take the 7.5 with New York. At home against Philly. There is an expectation that Philly bounces back tonight against a team that most people think stinks in the Giants. I've mentioned this. You've watched the Giants the last couple of weeks. You know that they are very capable defensively, especially with their pass rush. Now, they lost another piece. They're an injured football team right now, a little bit more so than they were over the weekend. They lost Slayton. He is out tonight with a hamstring. They lost Malik Neighbors in the game against the Chargers. So the number of options for Jackson Dart aren't very good, and they're going against a very good defense. But I think this will be a game that gets determined by mistakes. The team that makes the most will lose the game. But even the team that makes the most, if it's the Giants, I think they can hang within the 7.5. I think this is a close football game. New York's played in a very motivated way in the last couple of weeks since going to Jackson Dart. I think that's been the most noticeable thing about the Giants. They are very, very enthusiastic defensive football team. Abdul Carter is playing at a high level. Burns and Thibodeau and Okereke. And of course, Dexter Lawrence is an absolute stud. It's too bad they lost the game on Sunday. Not too bad because I actually bet New Orleans. It was all about the turnovers. They led the game 14-3 and then decided to hand the ball to New Orleans 5 times. Okay, not 2 or 3 turnovers, 5 turnovers, one of which got returned 86 yards for a touchdown. The Giants were down 19-14 going in for the go-ahead score early in the fourth quarter, and there was a fumble and a return, 86 yards, and that pretty much cinched it. But in that game, man, Spencer Rattler was okay, and Kendra Miller, and I talked about him earlier in the week, maybe yesterday. I like him. He's going to become a good running back in this league, but they gave up one big-time play offensively, and that was it. And it was to Sheehan, who can really fly. I like the Giants tonight plus the 7.5. It is an official pick. The other one that I was almost going to give out was the under in this game. It's 40.5. A lot of sharp action on the under. This started at 41.5, 42. It's down to 40.5. The public action's a little bit more split on it than I would like. That's why I'm going to back off it. But, typically in these standalone games, I've talked about this over the years, the average bettor just loves to play overs because they're just easier to root for. So if you're going to sit down for Monday Night Football or Thursday Night Football or Sunday Night Football, and you're going to bet a total, you're going to bet the over if you're not, a typical sharp bettor, because it's more fun and it's easier to root for. It's painful to root for the under, especially when the number's low, like 40.5 tonight. I mean, you're hoping for runs and clock movement, and if they're going to throw it, it's short, but it's caught so the clock moves. And then you don't want a lot of punts. You want some first downs until they get to about the 40, and then you want them to go backwards and then punt it. It's hard to root for unders when the number is short. And that's why I like the under tonight. I personally will probably play under 40.5. But it's not an official play. The official play is the Giants plus the 7.5. So that'll kick it off. No college action tonight, just the NFL game plus 7.5. I wish I had talked about this yesterday because I'm into the baseball and I'm betting the baseball. I had the Yankee Blue Jay under last night, 8.5. everybody was on the over with the number of runs that have been scored in that series, and it ended 5-2 under. And tonight, the Dodgers in Game 4 with Glasnow, they are a short favorite. So I kind of like the Phillies tonight to force that series back to Philadelphia for a Game 5. We'll see what happens there. Kind of like the under there as well. There will be a lot of overaction, and that number's 8. Those are not smell test picks, football only. And the NCAA tournament, we do that every year. So the Giants plus the 7.5. Anything coming out of the park on Joe Witt and Cliff Kingsbury Day that's interesting, Ben? Max. I'm reading Ben right now.
Cliff Kingsbury did say this little thing about Bill that I think is interesting. He said he has a ways to go with his play without the ball. He mentioned pass pro, pass game, and any sort of lead blocking. He has to keep working to become the complete back. But since day one, when he touches the ball, he does good things with it. So Bill, while getting all this praise, he still has a lot of room to grow in the eyes of the coaching staff.
Yeah, the Suter pointed out that he was outstanding, but that he essentially did what he was supposed to do, that the blocking was insanely good. There's one run in the third quarter. He rips off a run, it's a counter, and he's untouched to the third level, and then he can't get by the safety. And Suter's point is, with running backs and offensive lines, if you get that guy to the third level, the safety is on the running back at that point. It was an outstanding tackle. But he just pointed out how there are just, at least Sunday, there were gaping opportunities, and there were a lot of opportunities to get to level 2 and level 3 even without even being touched. But Suter likes him for sure. Yeah. I wanted to leave with just this one thing. So the college basketball season is right around the corner. Today's Big Ten Media Day in college hoops. Maryland is going to essentially open up its season with Georgetown on November 7th. We're less than a month away. It's a Friday night game. Maryland and Georgetown resuming this, and it's going to become a regular thing. And this particular game, this year's game, is in College Park. Next year's game will be at Capital One. And because of TV, it's a Fox Sports 1 game. They set the starting time for 6 p.m. on a Friday night. This is what I was talking to Jim Smith about the other day. We were talking more about football, but some basketball. You just can't take Maryland in the biggest market in the Big Ten traffic-wise, other than L.A. Okay, L.A.'s now a part of it, and have games start at 6 o'clock. You'll have a great crowd in the second half for that game. I know how their crowds work. It's impossible to get to College Park if you're coming from almost anywhere except for College Park on a Friday in rush hour and get there for a 6 o'clock tip. They're airing Houston and UCF as the late game at 8:30. It should have been flip-flopped. Still looking forward to Maryland and Georgetown on November 7th to start hopefully something we will get every year. All right, done for the day. Tomorrow, big football show. Chris Russell's next.